In a story where silence cuts deeper than any blade, one slayer walks a path untold. This is Demon Slayer, The Silent Journey. Written by Emmanuel_Capricorn. Support the author on webnovel.com, and for more stories and more chapters check out my Patreon at patreon.com/phinjo. Prepare to listen, and let the silence speak. Chapter 1. Reincarnation. MC's POV. I'm fucked. I'm so fucked. I am so fucked. How many times do I have to tell you, Seiji, no cursing? A voice chided from the side while I lay flat on the floor, staring at the ceiling like a well-laid corpse. I was contemplating just how fucked I was. My head rolled lifelessly to the side to look at the person who had just reprimanded me. He was sitting on the floor, one knee drawn up to his chest. A small table sat in front of him, laden with various Japanese dishes, and he was eating a bowl of rice with chopsticks. He wore a traditional black Japanese outfit, and his face was marked with scars that hinted at the violence he had endured. But beneath those scars was a young face that couldn't be older than 20. Come and eat your food before it gets cold, he said, shoveling rice into his mouth without looking at me. Of course, he'd be enjoying his meal peacefully. Unlike me, he wasn't completely fucked, though, to be fair, he was just as screwed, but blissfully ignorant of what the future held. You might wonder why I was in such deep trouble, even contemplating suicide. The answer was simple. It was the year 1910, and somehow, I was living in a rural village in Japan. And if it wasn't obvious already, I had somehow traveled back exactly 110 years into the past. How? I didn't know. The last thing I remembered was sending a leave letter to the principal, faking sickness to skip school that day. I didn't die, didn't get hit by a truck, and didn't fall into a rabbit hole like Alice. One moment I was there, and the next, I was here. No hint, no warning, and definitely no logic. Actually, I'd been in this situation since yesterday, but hoping it was a dream, I'd slept. But the next day, I was still here, trapped in a kid's body in an era known to be one of the worst. For those unfamiliar with history, let me share some of the future events awaiting me. A person living in Japan during the early 1900s, World War I, the Great Kanto earthquake that killed around 150,000 people, World War II, the bloodiest war in human history with 85 million casualties, and the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yeah, what a future. Did I mention Hitler would soon rise to power too? Fantastic. I am so screwed, I muttered again. Are you going to lie there all day like a dead fish? If you don't come, I'll eat your share, the young man said after a while. I stayed on the floor a few more seconds before pushing myself up. I looked at him. Kenshi, my eldest brother, I recalled. Since arriving in this era yesterday, I'd slowly been regaining the memories of this 4-year-old body I'd inherited. There were 7 of us in the family, but everyone else was away for the day except for me and my brother. They thought I was sick since I'd refused to act right yesterday and slept all day. So they'd made my brother stay home to watch over me. As the youngest, I was quite spoiled. I'm not hungry. You can have it, I said. My brother simply shrugged. Suit yourself, then. I got up and walked out of the room, aimlessly wandering while gathering my thoughts and processing the entire situation. Everything still felt unreal. I stepped into the courtyard, where a pleasant breeze eased my troubled mood. The leaves rustled, and the air, untainted by pollution, filled my lungs. The sun hung high, its warmth caressing my skin. The greenery seemed to glow, bathed in its light. It was a beautiful summer day, and the chirping of birds and buzzing of insects made it feel like a dream. I was born deaf in my original life, so this was the first time I was hearing anything. If not for the memories I was slowly regaining, I would have had a harder time adjusting. So I listened closely to the world's sounds, the melodious music of nature. I thought to myself, maybe everything wasn't so bad. I had no family back home. My mother ran away with a man when I was 10, and my father died from alcohol the following year. I'd been passed around relatives like a chore. My social life was non-existent because I was deaf. I couldn't afford hearing aids, so I remained completely deaf for the 13 years I'd lived. Instead, I'd learned to read lips for basic communication. I was bullied in school too, sent to a government school where the poor and lowlifes went, and they were more than happy to bully the small, unfortunate kid. I'd actually kicked one of them in the shin not long ago and was trying to skip school in fear of retaliation when everything happened, and I traveled to the past. So there was nothing much to miss from my other life. Maybe, even though I was born in a terrible era, this could be a great chance to start over. I had a proper family now, and judging from my memories, they were all great people. With my future knowledge, I could escape the upcoming disasters and maybe even thrive in this world. So maybe this wasn't such a bad turn of events. Scratch that, this was a great turn of events. A new start, and I could finally fulfill my dream of hearing sound. Maybe I'm not fucked. I'm blessed. We're home, my mother announced as my small body ran to greet my new family. Kenshi followed behind with a small smile. He was a cool guy who'd fought in the Russo-Japanese War and survived to tell the tale. I'd spent the entire day with him and, in doing so, regained all my memories. Yes, my memories. I realized after recalling everything that I hadn't taken over a child's body. I was born as such and had only now recalled my past. Welcome home, I said with a smile, feeling giddy at not just seeing my mother but also hearing my own voice. I love talking, even in my past life when I was deaf. It always felt like magic how people could share thoughts, feelings, and intentions with just a movement of their lips. Oh, was my baby feeling well today? She cooed, picking me up and rubbing her cheeks against mine. She smelled like grass and soil, which made sense since my family were farmers. Why yeah, I replied, blushing. It was awkward as a 13-year-old to be handled like a baby, but at the same time, it felt good to be loved by your mother. That other woman could never compare. Where's father and the others? I asked. My mother replied with a smile. I came home early to prepare food since your brother can't be trusted with the task. They'll be home soon. Kenshi had an awkward smile and rubbed the back of his head under her faux disappointed gaze. Do you want to help mommy cook dinner, Seiji? My mother turned to me with a beaming smile. She was beautiful. She wore dull, dirt-stained clothes, and her hair was tied in a messy bun. But to me, she looked like nature's greatest gift. I nodded with a small smile. And that was the start of my new life. It was easy for someone who never had anything to start over. Chapter 2. Demon Attack. Seiji's POV. 3 years passed before I even realized it, and I had lived more than I ever did in my past life. I was happy. Some might find that hard to believe, given my initial reaction to this situation. But happiness comes from the people you surround yourself with, not the world around you. I experienced that firsthand. In this second life, I was lucky to be surrounded by a real family who truly loved me. How could I possibly be sad, even in the worst era of human history? How could I stop smiling when I finally had a family? There was my father, my mother, my older brother, and 3 older sisters. Including myself, we were a loving family of 7, quite small for this era. We were wealthy. Both my father and brother were retired army officers from the Russo-Japanese War. They'd bought a large piece of land for farming and a small mansion with their pension money, where we lived a slow, peaceful life, just as they'd always wanted. I felt blessed to have been reborn into such a family. My father and brother were tough but had a soft side for their family. My mother and sisters were beautiful, loving women who couldn't help spoiling me every moment. I was passed around like a teddy bear, and I was more than happy to oblige. I was the youngest by far, an 8-year gap between me and the next youngest. I was a late-in-life child, a pleasant surprise. But this happiness didn't last, and I would have expected it if I'd known the world I was living in. I was 7 when it happened. Who would have thought a Gen Z soul like me could ever enjoy farming? I said with a smile, wiping sweat from my face. As the family's little jewel, I wasn't allowed to do hard work yet, but I was in charge of watering the plants. They said I had a nurturing touch, and the plants I watered grew healthier. Of course, I knew they were exaggerating, but it was enough to make me take my job seriously. Which was why I was the only one in the crop field that afternoon. The sun was deep orange, about to set. But I stayed, as the field was next to our house, and it allowed me to witness my favorite scene every day. It's truly beautiful, I said, gazing at the horizon, specifically at the sun sinking between 2 mountains. I loved beautiful things. Since I was deaf in my past life, I had a strong appreciation for anything visually stunning, art, sculptures, pretty girls. I loved them all. After a minute of watching the sunset, I resumed my work and quickly finished watering the plants before it got dark. If I was late, my mother would worry. So after finishing, I hurried home. I thought it would be like every other day. I thought my mother would welcome me with a bright smile, my brother would praise me for working harder than everyone else. But that day was different. That day was the end of it all. What is that smell? I asked myself. It was the thick, metallic scent of blood, so strong it made me want to vomit. I quickened my steps toward the house. The closer I got, the stronger the smell became, and then I heard sobbing from inside. Mom, Dad. I ran to the door and slid it open. My blood froze at the sight. The image was forever imprinted in the darkest corner of my mind. Inside, the walls were painted with blood and intestines. Corpses and pieces of flesh were strewn from the entrance to the living room. My stomach twisted, and then my heart, as I realized they were the remains of my family. I couldn't hold it in and vomited violently in the doorway, my tears falling like a broken dam. I didn't feel anything then, even though I was bawling. Too many intense emotions at once, so my brain numbed everything. Then I heard a piercing scream, which made me look up. I stumbled and crawled toward the sound. The blood and flesh made the floor slippery, and I fell countless times. But I didn't care, because I knew whose voice that was. Miko, I called out, my juvenile voice filled with fear and panic. When I reached the kitchen, I saw my sister and something else, a monster I could only describe as ugly. He looked like an old man with a hunched back, wrinkled skin, and dirty white hair falling like webs from his balding head. He was extremely pale and was pinning my sister to the ground. My eyes shook at the sight. My sister was naked, her clothes torn by the monster's sharp claws. She was crying, her face twisted with pain and despair. One breast was gone, eaten by the monster. Her stomach was slashed open, her inside spilling out in blood so red it looked black. Her thighs and buttocks had gaping wounds, most of the flesh gone. The monster's face was covered in blood, and even my panicked mind could conclude what was happening. My sister was being eaten alive. And the way she was being eaten felt deliberate, like a picky eater choosing the best parts first. The scene was raw, unadulterated violence. It was demonic. I screamed. Ah. My throat ripped from the force. And then I charged at the monster who had killed my family and was eating my sister. My 7-year-old body moved as fast as it could, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I still hadn't felt anything yet. But before I could reach him, he turned toward me. His face, like an old man's, opened wide. He released a sonic boom that ruptured my eardrums and froze my adrenaline. My small body was sent flying, crashing into the wall. Pain. Pain coursed through my body, the first thing I felt. I clutched my bleeding ear, feeling warm liquid inside my head. I was dizzy. I tried to get up but couldn't. For a moment, I forgot up from down, right from left. My body was in shock, and I'd broken bones when I hit the wall. The only thing I could do was look up and watch as the monster continued devouring my sister. I still didn't feel anything but pain. But I was glad when her screaming finally stopped. I remained on the ground, watching until the end, until my sister became a lump of intestines and bare bones. I saw everything. I curled up on the ground, wriggling like a worm. Helpless. After he finished, the monster looked at me and came closer. I couldn't hear what he said. It felt like I was underwater. But I could read his lips. He said something about me being too small to eat and that he was full. But strangely, I vividly heard the last thing he said. His lips curled into the cruelest smile I'd ever seen, and with eyes filled with amusement, he said, "Thank you for the meal." I was helpless. I couldn't do anything. The demon left, but as I watched him go, I was filled with anger and hatred I never knew was possible. Could a child even bear such hatred? Out of pure spite, I pushed myself off the ground and ran after him. When he was in the doorway, about to leave, I caught up. I ran at him with mindless abandon, driven by anger and a desire for something else. I wanted to die. I wanted to die before my mind stopped panicking and this nightmare became reality. I wanted to die with my family. But the monster didn't kill me. I think he knew what I wanted and refused to grant my wish. He merely swung his arm, breaking my shoulder and ribs with his inhumane strength. And then, for the second time, he opened his mouth and released a sonic boom that sent me flying like a ragdoll. I lay sprawled on the ground, among the pieces of flesh I once called family. I couldn't even tell who was who, just a mingled mess of bones and intestines. The monster left, and I was alone in the house. My home had turned into hell. It took time, but then it came, pain. Not physical pain, but something deeper, from the core of my soul. Reality sank in, and the nightmare became vivid. I started bawling, feeling my heart crushed by an invisible hand. It felt like I was being strangled. Grief, sadness, pain, despair, guilt, every negative emotion I knew, and some I didn't. I gathered the pieces of flesh and bones, hugging them in a bloody mess of gore. And the whole night, I stayed in that hell, seeking a final shred of comfort from my lost family. I think I cried all night, but everything was silent because I'd lost my hearing again. That night, after 3 years of regaining my memories, I was robbed of everything I'd been blessed with in this second life. My family and my hearing. I mourned in silence. Chapter 3. The Transparent World. Sage's POV. I said the time and place I was born into couldn't have gotten any worse. I jinxed myself, because it got so much worse. Demon Slayer. That was the world I was living in now. That was my new reality. A manga and anime set in Japan's Taisho era. The main villains were demons who fed on human flesh and were vulnerable to sunlight. These demons were hunted by demon slayers, the heroes of the story. It was a dark shonen where almost every named character had their family slaughtered by demons in one way or another. So, if I'm being honest, it wasn't surprising that I suffered the same fate. But God, it was a hard fate to swallow. I couldn't accept it. I remember crying and mourning for days after losing my family. I cried until everything felt numb. But after a week, I was at peace with my situation. I was lucky, other than the initial grief, I didn't bear any lifelong traumas. My mentality was fundamentally different from everyone else's. I had known my family for only 3 years, while I lived 13 years in my past life without one. So what did that mean? It meant that deep down, I knew I never really had a family. The family I gained in my second life was a blessing I didn't deserve. It was like a privilege to even live with them and enjoy life for those 3 years. So instead of mourning what I lost, I learned to be thankful for what I had. You could say I was dealing with the death better than a child who knew his family his whole life. To them, it must have felt like someone destroyed their entire world. But to me, it felt like someone stole everything from me after I won the lottery. Two different feelings from the same event. The mind is a powerful thing. After a week, all I felt was hatred for those who had stolen from me. I despised the beings who robbed me of the warmth of a family. I would never forgive them, especially that old demon who refused to kill me. Fuck that ugly piece of shit. It had been 8 days since that night, and life had been silent for me ever since. With my hearing completely destroyed by the old demon's blood demon art, it was just like my past life. I was deaf and without family. Talk about going back to square one. In a short time, I got used to being deaf again. I even regained my old skill of reading lips to understand what people were saying. I guess old habits die hard. But even though I lived in perpetual silence, I was far from lonely. In fact, it was the opposite. I was never left alone since the incident. All the villagers came together to care for and comfort me. It got to the point where people were actually fighting over whose house I would stay in and who would take care of me. Not only that, the villagers were quick to clean up the mansion and prepare a big funeral for my family. And I kid you not, people I had never even met before cried harder than I did at the funeral. What could be the reason? Was it sympathy, pity for the child who lost his entire family in one night? Or was it human kindness? It was none of them. The real reason was greed. As I said before, my family was exceptionally wealthy thanks to my father and brother. These people were trying to get on my good side so I would choose them as my legal guardian. I was still a child in the eyes of the law, so I couldn't inherit my family's wealth until I came of age. Until then, their wealth would fall into the hands of my guardian. Normally, a relative should be my guardian, but since I had no other relatives, it would have to be one of these villagers. Though I would eventually regain full ownership of my inheritance, there were still many benefits people could gain while I was young. For example, they could use our land to cultivate crops, live in our mansion, and even launder my money under the excuse of using it to raise me. Truly disgusting, but that's just human nature. You do everything to survive. Especially in a time like this, where war and poverty were constant. I knew all of this because they didn't hold back what they said in front of the kid they thought had completely lost his hearing. I might be deaf now, but like I said, I could still read their lips easily. Can you understand me? A stupid question to ask a kid who just lost his hearing, but okay. I could entertain this random villager who acted like my favorite uncle since my parents died. At least he was nice enough to feed me good food and let me have my own room, until now. I nodded. Really? Then do you remember what happened that night? Did a demon really attack your family? He asked, using exaggerated body language. I just stared at him with the blankest face I could manage. People of this era were truly insensitive. Or maybe it's just a guy thing. Did he not realize I could be traumatized and might break down again if he kept bringing that up? I wasn't, but still. I guess they couldn't help being curious. Demons and gods were somewhere between myth and reality. They assumed a demon attacked because of the gore, but some argued it was a wild animal from the mountain, a bear, maybe. I don't know if anyone's told you this, but you have a really creepy stare, he muttered to himself, but I saw his lips move. Actually, no one had told me that. But I guess it was reasonable for my gaze to change after what I gained. I continued staring at his face and focused on my eyes. Then my gaze pierced right through his head, and I saw his brain. Literally. I saw his brain and his skull. My eyes traveled down, and I saw his expanding lungs and pulsing heart. I clearly saw how his heart pumped blood throughout his body and how his muscles twitched with every movement he made. I also noticed a minor muscle tear in his biceps, quads, and shoulder, hinting at the work he was doing in the fields. It felt like I had built-in X-ray vision. I could see everything I wanted, and things I didn't. I could also read his body language like an open book and predict his movements by the rhythm of his breathing and the contraction of his muscles. At first, I thought I was just seeing things. I thought it was the result of trauma from watching my loved ones get eaten alive. But soon enough, I realized it had nothing to do with trauma. Instead, it was one of the rarest powers in the Demon Slayer world. It was called the transparent world. People with this ability could see the inner workings of any creature. They could perceive the flow of blood, breathing, muscular contractions, and joint movements of the creature they were looking at. They could then use this ability to predict movements, find weaknesses, and even discern genetic makeup, which helped distinguish demons from humans or trace descendants. Not only that, the transparent world also boosted the user's perception and gave them faster reflexes. There might be other benefits not mentioned in the manga. There were only 7 known users in the entire world, and the only way to attain the transparent world was after activating the Demon Slayer mark, another unique power in this world. It was truly odd how I got this power without awakening my mark. My only guess was that it had something to do with me being deaf, because, as we know, the loss of one sense can enhance the others. To be honest, I wasn't worried about how I got it. Only how I was going to use it. I'll leave you now, the man said, using nonsensical hand gestures. Call me if you need anything. He went out of the room and slid the door shut. I was left alone, sitting upright on the futon. Somehow, the perpetual silence became heavier once I was by myself. I wondered why I hadn't killed myself already. I didn't have a reason to live any longer. I had already died in my past life, and everything after that was just extra. As I said, the time I spent with my family was already a privilege. And this world wasn't even my own. This was the world of Demon Slayer, a world where I didn't belong. A place where I shouldn't exist. I looked around the room and observed every difference between this life and my past one. The sliding doors, the decorations, the futons, the age, the culture. It was all vastly different from my first life. I felt like an outsider. My family was the only anchor I had to this world. They were the ones who made me feel like I belonged here, but with them gone, I felt like I shouldn't be here at all. So why hadn't I just killed myself? What could I possibly expect from continuing to live? I was deaf and an orphan. Was this not exactly how I was in my first life? No, scratch that. It was worse, with the presence of demons and the upcoming world wars and disasters. It would be easier to just kill myself right here and finally rest or fade away to nothingness. Such thoughts were loud in the silence of my world. I contemplated for a long time until I eventually came to a conclusion. Hope. That was the biggest thing that made me want to keep living. The hope that everything would not remain as it was. Maybe I would eventually find a new family to live for, make friends, fall in love, and find a reason to fear death again. Hope became a pillar of my world. And there was one more thing that prevented me from committing suicide right then and there. Demons. Fuck those ugly pieces of shit, especially that old demon who took everything from me. I would slaughter every last one of them. My hatred created a goal for me, and I found a reason to continue living once more. That goal became my driving force during the darkest moments of my life. I knew I was capable of realizing this dream with my future knowledge and the transparent world. So I got up from the futon and walked toward the mirror in the room. I stood in front of it and looked at my reflection. A young boy with dark circles around his eyes stared back at me with purple eyes that glowed eerily. His eyes looked dead and alive at the same time. He wore a black houri and had messy purple hair on top of his head. His skin was pale, and he was quite big for a kid his age. So that was me. Not bad, I thought to myself. I hadn't seen my reflection in a week, but I still looked good as ever. I was handsome in my past life, and I was sure to grow up just as beautiful in this one. Well, another reason to continue living, I guess. I focused my eyes and then looked at the inner workings of my own body. It was kind of gross. My brain, lungs, muscles, heart, and all my organs revealed themselves under my gaze. This was it. This ability would be extremely useful to grow stronger. It was every science-based bodybuilder's dream ability and would allow me to train with utmost efficiency. Not only that, it would help me immensely in learning breathing styles. Well, what am I waiting for? Another demon attack, I thought to myself when I saw that my injuries were mostly healed. Then I got down and began doing push-ups while carefully observing my reflection. Chapter 4. Path to Strength. Sage's POV. Can you recall what the demon looked like? Why was everyone so insistent on traumatizing me? If they kept reminding me like this, I might actually start crying just to make sure they never bothered me again. I looked away from his moving lips and focused on the board he held. The question he'd asked was written in bold hiragana. I knew how to read Japanese, even though it wasn't my native language from my past life. Back then, I was something of a language enthusiast. I could read and write in 12 different languages. It had something to do with being deaf. Writing was my only way to communicate with others. In this second life of mine, I hadn't gone to school, but my past life's knowledge translated into an actual skill. At 7 years old, I was probably the most educated person in this village. I looked up at the man holding the board and analyzed his outfit. He wore a black jacket buttoned up to his neck, paired with black pants. A white belt held a katana tightly strapped to his waist. All in all, it was the standard Demon Slayer uniform. Why does it matter, dude? You're 10 days late anyway. Wait, what did you say? Oops, did I say that out loud? I reminded myself to be careful. I occasionally had slip-ups like that after going deaf again. I'd blurt out my thoughts without realizing it, since I couldn't even hear my own voice. The demon really fucked up my ear. I said you won't believe me anyway. No one does, I replied. He gave me a look that screamed, that was not what you just said. But what was he going to do? Argue with a 7-year-old who just lost his whole family? No, he shook his head, and his eyes softened instead. I promise I'll believe what you say. Do you trust me? No, dude, we just met a few minutes ago. He moved closer to the futon where I was sitting and gently placed his hand on my shoulder, supporting his body with his other hand. He leaned in. I understand you, kid. I went through the same thing when I was a child. And now, I'm a demon slayer. I hunt those monsters so they can never hurt anyone again. So I need you to tell me what the demon looked like and what his powers were. His eyes met mine, and for the first time since I'd gained the transparent world, someone held my gaze. I wondered, did he remember I was deaf, or had that fact completely slipped his mind in his emotional state? After a few seconds of silence, awkward only for him, I replied. He looked like an old man with a hunched back. His skin was pale, almost blue, and he was very, very ugly. They all are, he chuckled. And his powers, I continued, he could shout really loudly. It even made my ears bleed. The demon slayer fell silent, lost in thought, before muttering to himself, so a sound-based blood demon art, huh. Then he focused back on me, flashing a smile. Thank you for your help, kid. I'll make sure your family rests in peace by killing that demon. He stood up and adjusted his uniform. He'd arrived in the village that day and had gotten permission to speak to me alone. But now that he'd gotten what he wanted, he was leaving. I did not let him. Wait a minute, sir. I called out, crawling out of the futon. He turned back, tilting his head in question. Yes. How can I be like you? I asked bluntly. How can I become a demon slayer? He paused at the question. I could see his hesitation. On one hand, he did not want to give an answer to protect me, but on the other, he knew what it was like to lose loved ones to a demon. He understood the hatred and the need for revenge. Please, I added. He was a good guy. I never learned his name, but I hoped I'd meet him again. He gave me a proper answer, though it wasn't as detailed as I'd hoped. Most of what he said I already knew, but I appreciated the help, especially for telling me the location of the final selection. The path to becoming a demon slayer was simple. First, you had to find a mentor to teach you sword skills and train your body. They could be any demon hunter, but most mentors were veteran demon slayers or retired Hashiras. After passing the training, you had to obtain your own niche and blade. That's why a mentor was necessary. You could only get one through them. Then, you had to go to Mount Fujikasen for the final selection. Pass that, and you'd become an official demon slayer. Pretty straightforward, if I'm being honest. The only problem was finding a demon slayer to mentor me. Demon slayers weren't exactly common, and veterans or retired Hashiras were even rarer. But then again, I could just go to the final selection directly and take a niche and blade from one of the participants. Scratch that, I wouldn't even have to steal. If I remembered the show correctly, Many trainees died every year in the final selection, so I could probably loot their bodies. My main priority should be getting stronger. I lay back on the futon and relaxed my body for a much needed rest. I'd thought that since my body was already healing, training wouldn't be a problem. I was wrong. After a couple of days of push-ups and exercises, my injuries worsened. Basically, I couldn't heal if I was constantly using up all my energy and creating muscle tears while training. I got so caught up in getting stronger that basic logic slipped my mind. It was kind of embarrassing, but in my defense, I'd thought it would be fine. This was a shonen world, where breaking your limits with determination and friendship was just another Tuesday. Alas, this wasn't fiction anymore. It was real, and even if it were, I wasn't the main character. So with all those thoughts swirling in my ever-silent world, I closed my eyes and focused on resting. If I had to rest, I was going to rest like no one ever rested before. Such was the path to strength. So I slept. Chapter 5. Training Arc. Seiji's POV. The next phase of my life was filled with challenges and self-discovery as I embarked on a path toward strength. It was far from easy. If my life were a book, I'd title this chapter, The Training Arc. First, I was adopted by the community leader of our village. Contrary to my expectations, we didn't move into our mansion due to fears it might be cursed or haunted, especially given the brutal slaughter of my parents. However, they did use our fields for cultivation, as I had anticipated. It was during this time that I realized greed was only a small part of human nature. Just because people were greedy didn't make them bad. Humans had flaws, but they also had souls. With my enhanced eyes, I could detect lies and deceit from miles away. Believe me when I say there was no deception. Humans were kind. They were good people. Though I could never love them as I did my previous family, I was grateful they were there for me. It must have been difficult for them to handle me in my early days when I isolated myself, using my deafness as an excuse to keep others at a distance. But they persisted. Eventually, I gave in, and I'm glad I did. The couple who adopted me were in their 40s, considered old in a world where life expectancy was only 42. Their 2 daughters had already married and moved in with their husbands, leaving just the 3 of us. Despite being a small family, our home was never lonely. As the village leader, my uncle often hosted travelers and traders, as there were no hotels. They would stay with us or in other homes for the night. My training began after I fully recovered from my injuries. Initially, it focused on building muscle, using my past knowledge and the transparent world to guide me. Beyond physical strength, I sought every means to improve. This included practicing with wooden swords, sticks, to master the movements. The transparent world became crucial in refining my actions. I could see how my muscles worked during each movement, allowing me to teach myself perfect form, even without prior knowledge. I called it perfect movement. Since using the transparent world required minimal effort, I kept it active constantly. This let me monitor and correct my movements daily until they flowed with flawless precision. I never wasted any motion. I ensured only the necessary muscles engaged, using just enough force. Having the transparent world active also made me intimately familiar with the human body. After 2 years of observing every detail, I could predict actions with ease. I learned the hidden patterns in movement, analyzing the body's current state to foresee future actions. At times, it felt like people were speaking to me through their bodies. Movement became a language I understood completely. Yes, I had mastered the language of the body. One interesting side effect was the need for extensive sleep. My brain worked overtime processing the visual information, leaving me exhausted. I had to sleep at least 12 hours daily. This would have been worse if I weren't deaf. Fortunately, the part of my brain that would have processed sound was free, allowing more focus on my sight. I hoped this minor drawback would resolve once my brain fully matured. 3 years passed, and my progress boiled down to 3 key areas: enhanced physique, perfect movement, and body language. At 11, I realized my improvement had plateaued, aside from physical growth. I began seeking new ways to strengthen myself. That's when I learned of a kendo dojo in Tokyo, just a half-day's walk from our village. I asked my uncle to buy me a bicycle so I could travel between Tokyo and the village daily. He didn't object, as I rarely asked for anything, and it was purchased with my inheritance. This also meant I wasn't expected to work on the farms. Not only were they cultivating my fields, but they also used my inheritance to provide for me. They left me to pursue my goals. At 11, I joined the Noma dojo in Tokyo. This marked the first time I truly understood my strength. How strong was I? One word: overpowered. At first glance, it might not seem impressive, But the two skills I developed, perfect movement and body language, were Gamegas. Combined with a physique comparable to a 15-year-old, I could easily defeat the dojo master. On my first day, I requested a spar with the master. That's when I realized fighting was different for me. How so? For me, fighting was a conversation. As we began, the master did not speak, but his body did. His first attack, a vertical slash, told me he'd practiced that move over 10,000 times. The tension in his right arm, far greater than his left, revealed he was right-handed. His gaze to the left indicated his attack would typically be blocked and countered from that side. His firmly planted feet showed no fear, only a desire to demonstrate his skill. His tight shoulders signaled the swing's endpoint and force. His bent elbow telegraphed his next move, a horizontal slash from the right. It was overwhelming. He communicated everything without words, all in under a second. I dodged his swing with perfect movement, flowing like water, finding the easiest path. After my dodge, the master looked surprised and launched another attack, exactly as I'd predicted, a horizontal slash from the right. I blocked it with minimal effort, our bokkens meeting with barely any resistance. Then it was my turn. As I prepared to attack, the master's body spoke again, revealing his weaknesses and defenses. His hesitation to step back showed his arrogance, his greatest flaw. His injured middle finger gripped the handle poorly. The tension in his hips indicated back pain from years of training and age. His uneven eyesight, with his right eye stronger than his left, likely meant he wore glasses to read. He shifted his weight to his right foot, signaling difficulty moving in that direction. He blinked, and I stepped in. I wasn't fast or powerful, but my effortless movement made me appear twice as quick, even triple. I swung at his right side. He stepped back with expert footwork, attempting to block. But perfect movement allowed me to adjust mid-action, using only the necessary muscles. I instantly changed my swing to an upward slash aimed at his bokken holding hand. The master, experienced, saw through my attack and leaned back to dodge. Yet, his body had already told me his next move. I changed my slash to a stab, lunging forward. He couldn't block, and my bokken struck, not his heart, but his pancreas. I knew exactly where it landed. Without a doubt, he would have died. A stunned silence followed. His body froze in shock. Then, with a strained smile, he said, "Stabbing isn't allowed." Right, kendo was a sport, and I'd ignored the referee's rules. I dropped my bokken and bowed. "I'm sorry, it's my loss." That day, I grasped the full extent of my transparent world-enhanced skills. Though it paled compared to someone like Muishiro Tokito, who became a Hashira in 2 months at my age, I felt adequately strong. I didn't know my limits, but if I could read a kendo master like a book, weaker demons wouldn't stand a chance. After the spar, I was hailed as a prodigy, a once-in-a-millennium genius. In this training phase, I relied solely on perfect movement, learning sword techniques without the transparent world. It took only half a year to become the strongest in the dojo. I'd learn techniques at the dojo, then master and improve them at home using the transparent world. Cycling daily between the city and village strengthened my body and stamina. I carried baggage and other items, becoming a mailman of sorts, though I did not mind. It was excellent training. I entered numerous competitions, winning every time. I gained fame and added to my inheritance. 2 years passed, and I turned 13. This marked the hardest part of my training. Chapter 7. First Demon. Seiji's POV. At the age of 13, I began my journey. The plan was simple. Channel all my teenage spite and rebellious energy toward the demons. Since I died at 13 in my past life, they were in for 2 lifetimes worth of teenage angst. I almost felt sorry for them. "I'll be leaving now," I said to my uncle and aunt, who had cared for me for years. "We know nothing we say will make you stay," my uncle sighed. "So what else can we do? Good luck on your travels, my boy." "Take care of yourself, Seiji," my aunt added, wiping tears from her eyes. "Send us letters, and always remember you have a home with us." I bowed deeply, showing my respect and gratitude. They were the closest thing I had to family. We might have been even closer if I'd opened up over the years. But since that night, I'd kept a distance from everyone. It was fear of losing another family, and fear of what I was about to do. My heart was still too bitter for that kind of love. "Thank you for taking care of me," I said, bowing a little deeper. I hoped they'd live long lives, maybe even single-handedly raise Japan's average life expectancy of 45 years. After saying goodbye, I left the house and the village. I hadn't told them exactly what I planned to do, only that I was leaving to travel alone and that it was important to me. I'd been talking about it since I was young, so they couldn't argue and knew it was inevitable. Besides, traveling alone from village to village wasn't uncommon. Many did it for adventure or to find a place to settle. So I left with their blessing. Strapped to my side was a katana, forged by one of Japan's most famous smiths. It was a gift for beating my dojo's master fair and square when I was 12. I also carried a bag with essentials, first aid, clean water, tools, utensils, and canned food my aunt had packed. I'd bought a map from the city, so I had a rough idea of where to go. The journey to Mount Fujikasane would take about 2 weeks on foot, but I planned to take a month. I wanted to hunt demons and gain experience before the final selection. Plus, I just wanted to enjoy the journey. To my 21st century readers, did you know how beautiful Japan was? Especially in the early 1900s, when nature was mostly untouched by humans and pollution. It's insane how much we've ruined it in just a century. But for now, the world was beautiful. And I loved beautiful things. My eyes could fully appreciate nature's glory. I could see the air rushing through the forest, the relieving breeze, every reflection of light on the leaves, and every moss on the rocks. I saw colors with names and without, colors a normal person would never notice. If everyone saw beauty like I did, I think they'd fall in love too. It would have been even more beautiful if I could travel during the day, but alas, I wasn't perfect. I slept during the day and traveled at night. Partly because I wanted to be attacked by a demon, but mostly because I was deaf. If I slept at night, when demons roamed, I'd be vulnerable. I was a deep sleeper, after all. So I slept during the day, when demons hid in caves or holes. Don't mistake this for a weakness, though. I'd trained my other senses, especially smell and touch, to be extremely sensitive. I wasn't completely defenseless. During the day, I slept. At night, I traveled. People were kind, and there were many huts or small villages across Japan. I'd ask politely for a place to sleep, and they were always happy to help. I'm not sure if I was lucky or unlucky, but I did not encounter any demons in the first 2 days. It was only on the third day, while trekking up Mount Akihara, that I met my first demon. And what an experience it was. Mount Akihara was cold year-round, but since it wasn't winter, there was no snow. It was a named mountain, meaning it was significantly larger than most. People rarely visited due to its high altitude, harsh conditions, and the fact that it wasn't the only route. The bridge route was shorter and led to the same place. But I'd chosen the mountain for 2 reasons: the hope of encountering a demon and the desire to catch the sunrise at its peak. How beautiful that must be. The air was thin and grew worse as I climbed. It was frigid, and each inhalation froze my lungs, causing slight discomfort in my nasal cavity. Still, I was well trained, so it barely bothered me. I didn't know if there were animals or insects, but I imagined them chirping loudly in the silence of the night. A small, rugged trail wound up the mountain, covered in vegetation from lack of use. The trees had thick roots and few branches to endure the strong winds that blew year-round. It was pitch black, lit only by the stars and moon. But the darkness did not bother me. With my transparent world, everything was perpetually visible. So I noticed immediately when the wind changed. Something rushed at me from the side, and the smell of blood and rotten flesh filled my nose. I stopped. And right then, a demon burst from the forest to my left. His body flew across the trail, missing me by inches. Had I not stopped, he would have crashed into me, probably breaking every bone. His attack was calculated, even taking my footsteps into account. Like a predator leaping at its prey. Well, that was embarrassing, I commented as his body sprawled to a stop. But don't worry, no one else saw that, I added. He did not appreciate my words, growling like an animal, veins popping on his face. I promise I won't tell a soul, I said. He lunged at me. It was a pity. If he hadn't revealed himself, he might have stood a chance. But that brief moment allowed me to study him in detail. I knew his strength, his main abilities, everything. He'd already told me everything. His body disappeared in a burst of speed, leaving a shockwave as he shot at me like a cannon. To my eyes, though, it was painfully slow. Short bursts of power, that was his gimmick. He looked like a middle-aged man in a white houri, with pale skin, thick legs, and bulbous forearms ending in spear-like fingers. I took a single step, bent my knees, and leaned back to dodge his second attempt at my head. A swift, precise dodge, and he missed again. But he did not stop. He landed on a tree horizontally, pushed off the trunk, and bounced between trees at blinding speed, for normal eyes, at least. I think he was trying to confuse me, but it was still painfully obvious. He might not speak with words, but actions speak louder. The direction he looked, the way he placed his feet, the tension in his neck muscles, and the position of the trees, it all told me exactly when he'd lunge or jump like a monkey. I could easily predict his movements. At last, he shot at me again. His body became a blur of fluttering white, and I sidestepped, making him miss by a hair's breadth. An explosion of air and dirt followed as he planted his hand on the ground. When the dust settled, he was crouching, a shocked, almost fearful look in his eyes. He was inches from me, so I playfully chopped at his head with my hand. That's when his eyes fell on my katana. I saw his muscles tighten in fear, his heartbeat shifting sharply. It had been rapid with excitement, but now it thundered with fear. He must have mistaken me for a high-ranking demon slayer. He was smart enough to realize he was in danger. He pushed off the ground, trying to flee. Too bad he'd already told me his plan a second before moving. I finally drew my katana. Just as he thought he'd escaped, I sliced his ankle. When he tried to take another step, his entire foot came off. With the sudden imbalance, he rolled like a doll. He was weak, pathetically so. And he talked a lot. But one thing fascinated me, the difference between a human body and a demon's. It wasn't obvious, but if you looked closely, they were entirely different. A demon's muscles were thicker and more active than a human's. They were incredibly tight, moving even at the risk of tearing. That was just the start. Demons had thicker bones, and their blood flow was unnatural. It didn't rely solely on the heart. At a glance, I could tell their healing factor removed the limiter in their brain. Humans could only use a fraction of our true strength to avoid harming ourselves. But demons could use 100% of their strength at all times. That was one reason for their superhuman strength, aside from the obvious magical factor. Incredible, I said, watching his wound close. I could see his body heat rise rapidly, his ankle releasing smoke as it regenerated. I have to know more about this, I said. The demon turned to look at me, fear mixed with anger and relief on his face. Your sword, it's not a Nichiren blade, he said. I tilted my head. Yes, believe it or not, no blacksmith or weapon dealer in Tokyo knew about Nichiren blades. I couldn't find them at all. Then you can't kill me, he said, a crooked smile spreading across his face. I nodded, affirming his statement. Indeed. His foot healed, and he rushed at me with newfound confidence, knowing I didn't have a Nichiren blade, the bane of all demons. Why should he be afraid if I couldn't kill him? He probably thought he was being sneaky, but his body language had already given away his attack. I leaned back slightly, tilting my head just enough for his claw to nick the first layer of my skin. Then I took a sharp breath and used my incomplete breathing style. Steroid breathing. Yes, I was serious about the name. My speed doubled, and I drew my katana with swiftness he couldn't even perceive. My attack was perfect, without unnecessary energy or movement. It aimed true and did its job precisely. Under his shaking eyes, the demon watched his arm literally peeled from the bone by my blade. Cutting or chopping would have taken more energy and movements, so I simply carved his flesh from the bone with a circular motion. It was effective but brutal. Luckily, I was deaf, so I didn't hear his shrill scream of agony. He fell on his back, watching in horror as his arm became white bone. He was healing, but the regeneration seemed excruciating, and he writhed like a worm. Yeah, I can't kill you, I said, slowly approaching as he tried to crawl away. But you said that like it's a good thing for you. A swift death would have been preferable to what I did next. The demon became my first victim. I used him to vent years of hatred and bitterness. I also used him to familiarize myself with a demon's biology, vital for the transparent world, and test the limits of their healing factor. At one point, he prayed for sunrise. Chapter 8. Mount Fujikasen. Seiji's POV. Please, please, please. No more, no more. I wondered how many people had uttered those same words to him as he tore them apart, limb by limb. Judging by his strength and the way my sister cried and begged while he devoured her alive, I'd guess at least hundreds. Stop talking. Move. Run, I said to his dismembered body, which no longer healed. I needed him to move so I could familiarize myself with a demon's anatomy and understand the language of the unique bodies. Blood stained the narrow trail, and pieces of his demon flesh were splattered everywhere. He had fought hard to escape and resist at first, but eventually, he gave up. Now, his body didn't even heal when I cut him. He lay on the ground, dismembered, like a useless corpse. The only movement was his lips, which twitched to form incoherent words. I stood over him and watched. His face had stopped contorting in agony long ago, and he had stopped crying. He just stared blankly, like a dead fish. It was no longer stimulating. The sun rose shortly after, and the demon finally reacted again. His face stretched in relief, and tears fell from his eyes. He was happy to see the sun. The sunlight bathed him, and his body dissipated like ash. His blood and scattered flesh vanished too. In just a few seconds, there was no evidence he had ever existed. That was definitely an experience, I told myself. I might have gone a bit overboard since he was the first demon I encountered. Recalling the helplessness I felt that night, the power I now held over demons was intoxicating. It was like a drug that filled the bottomless rage and hatred inside me. I knew it wasn't a good thing. I couldn't blindly hate demons because I knew there were many good ones, like Nezuko, Tamayo, Yushiro, and others who were just as much victims as humans. I also knew feeding such negative emotions and walking the path of endless revenge wasn't wise. I watched Naruto, okay. But I was only 13, so allow me to be childish and petty. I still had time to grow. I continued my journey after that. I had enough time to reach the mountain's peak and watch the sunrise, as I'd wanted. Then I headed back toward Mount Fujikasane. I wasn't in the mood to sleep, so I traveled all morning and only rested after noon. Days passed, and to my silent delight, I encountered demons every night since then. They weren't as powerful as the first one, but they were enough for self-training and research. I also practiced my breathing style extensively during this time. I realized the vast gap between a demon's physical prowess and a human's, which highlighted the importance of breathing techniques. The mountains and forests provided great training grounds. They tested my endurance and gave me the perfect environment to sharpen my senses. To get stronger, I had to rewire my mind and accept that the logic of my past life did not apply to this world. I often struggled with that as a child. At one point in my journey, I encountered a village plagued by a demon with blood demon art. It was during the final week of my travels. The demon was a beautiful woman who could hypnotize and brainwash people with her voice. Her blood demon art worked similarly to a siren's, from what I could understand. The demon realized that if she acted smart, she could have an unlimited food supply instead of hunting humans every night. So she brainwashed the villagers and managed the village to suit her needs. The entire village was under her command, and she was rearing humans like cattle. The female population in the village outnumbered the males by about 10 to 1. The village had strange customs and practices designed to increase birth rates. Most males were eaten, while women were kept as breeding tools to provide the demon with an infinite food supply. The men in the village were just enough to maintain the farms and impregnate the women. Honestly, it was a fucked up village, rarely visited because anyone who entered would be hypnotized and eaten. It was the demon's personal human farm. Of course, the demon's blood demon art did not work on me since I was deaf. At first, I did not even notice and thought it was just a really strange village with bizarre traditions. But when I heard the women talking about how proud they were of their sons sacrificing themselves to the gods, I knew something was wrong. Honestly, my experience in the village could be an entirely different book on its own, but we won't tell that story today. Maybe in another volume, I'll detail my time there. So I fought the demon controlling the villages, and it was my most challenging battle yet. The demon had feasted on human flesh for many years, so she was powerful. But she fell swiftly like the others because she was at a disadvantage. Her blood demon art did not work on a deaf person. After the demon's control over the village was broken, the villagers nearly went mad. They still retained memories of what happened and knew the horrible things they'd been manipulated into doing, sacrificing their children, killing travelers, and committing acts of debauchery. I did not stay long in the village. I left after telling them what happened wasn't their fault and to blame the demon for everything. And to start anew. The village would be the last one I visited on my journey because there was no way in hell I wanted to get into another mess. At last, after more than a month of traveling, I reached the base of Mount Fujikasane. I did not even need to look at the map to confirm I was there because the sweet scent of a particular flower filled the air. Beautiful flower trees covered the mountain, giving it a distinctive look compared to the rest of the surroundings. I did not need to be told they were wisteria trees. They were the color of lavender and covered most of the mountain. I was truly stunned by their beauty, especially when they released a faint glow in the dark of night, almost as if they had magical properties. There was a small village at the mountain's base. Its inhabitants were from the Demon Slayer Corps but weren't demon slayers. Instead, they were stationed in the mountains to maintain the wisteria trees. They were essentially gardeners. Some were retired demon slayers, while others were workers who used wisteria to create products like incense. There was a whole industry for wisteria products at the base of Mount Fujikasane. When I approached them and explained why I'd come to the mountain, I received the unfortunate news that the final selection was still a few weeks away. Oh, the horror of being forced to wait. But my time at Mount Fujikase over the following weeks wouldn't go to waste, as I met someone who would become one of the most important people in my life. I thought I'd be the only one who came early for the final selection. It seems I was wrong. There are still people whose hearts burn hotter than mine. I was deaf, but even I knew the guy was loud. It was only the second day after I reached Mount Fujikase, the place where the final selection would take place. He approached me while I was sleeping under one of the wisteria trees, their beauty casting a drowsy spell on me. That was when I met him. Hello, comrade. My name is Kyojiro Rengoku. It's nice to meet you. Image. Chapter 9. Rengoku Kyojiro. Seiji's POV. Hello, comrade. My name is Kyojiro Rengoku. It's nice to meet you. I still remember that day vividly. The warm sunlight filtered through the wisteria trees, caressing my skin. The brightness, once a nuisance that kept me awake, had become comforting through habit. He approached with the energy of a full day, and for a moment, I thought I'd regained my hearing. His presence was like the sun, unapologetic in its brilliance, outshining everyone else. I lazily opened my eyes to glance at him and was immediately awestruck. He was beautiful. In an artistic sense, of course. If God were an artist, Rengoku would be a masterpiece. His tall frame was packed with muscles, clearly designed for combat and swordplay. A wild aura, a fighting spirit, if you will, surrounded him at all times. His organs were healthy and fresh, like those of a brand new car. They were flawless, untouched by drugs, tobacco, or any unhealthy lifestyle. His proportions and bone structure spoke of genetic blessing. His great-grandfather had been a swordsman, and his very existence was the result of generations of selective breeding. Not arranged marriages, but a direct lineage of the strongest sons. He was bred to be a powerful swordsman. Hi, my name is Kyojiro Rengoku. Nice to meet you, he announced for the second time. He was a tall young man, about a year older than me. His long, bright yellow hair had red streaks resembling flames, with 2 shoulder-length bangs and 2 chin-length bangs framing his face. His black, forked eyebrows contrasted sharply with his golden eyes, which faded to red with white pupils. He wore a yellow haori adorned with flame patterns. His eyes were so unique that I found myself staring. Hi, my name is Kyojiro Rengoku. Nice to meet you, he repeated for the third time. I got the feeling he wouldn't stop until I replied. Hello, Kyojiro Rengoku. My name is Shigen Seiji. It's a pleasure to meet you as well, I said to the future flame Hashira. He laughed. What a plain voice for someone who seems to burn with passion. It was funny because I'd heard that before. People said my voice lacked intonation, sounding flat as if stuck in a single octave. I guess I caught you at the wrong time. Apologies for waking you, he said, though his wide smile suggested he wasn't truly sorry. But may I ask why you're sleeping on such a beautiful morning? I didn't sleep last night, I replied, leaning comfortably against the tree again. Rengoku slapped his palm with a fist in realization. Oh, I see. You were hunting demons all night. I should have guessed. It was interesting to meet one of the most beloved characters in Demon Slayer. Unfortunately, like many fan favorites, he died at the hands of the demon Akaza. I actually cried when I saw his death as well. Wait, who died? Oops, did I say that out loud? Nothing, I mumbled, closing my eyes. Though meeting him was exciting, I was too tired to care. Maybe after some much-needed sleep, I'd interact with him more. He was here for the final selection, so he wasn't going anywhere soon. Seeing you rest so peacefully makes me want to rest too. Would it be a problem if I joined you? He asked, but I'd already closed my eyes and didn't hear him. Apparently, Rengoku took silence as consent, because he sat down beside me, leaning against the same tree. He closed his eyes as well. He, too, had traveled day and night to reach the mountain and needed rest even more than I did. So, the first time we met, we rested under the same tree, both exhausted from our respective journeys and battles. The wisteria tree provided a calming shade, perfect for a nap. From that day on, Rengoku stayed by my side, quickly becoming my first friend. A question from the readers: how do introverts like you make friends? The answer is we don't. An extrovert finds us, likes us, and adopts us. And that day, Kyojiro Rengoku found me. We woke up in the afternoon, and I realized Rengoku had been just as exhausted as I was when we first met. After the nap, he was smiling brighter and louder than before. But his smile and thunderous personality weren't annoying. They were endearing traits that people loved about him. His charisma was off the charts. In just a few hours, he became closer to the people at the mountain's base than I had in 2 days. He saw me as a kindred spirit, a fellow swordsman driven to protect the innocent and become a demon slayer. So, he stuck close to me, trying to get me to open up. Good luck with that. Even my uncle and aunt failed after 6 years. And I think he took that as a challenge. Something about his charisma and extroverted nature compelled him to get close and become friends. There was nothing inherently wrong with me. I wasn't some edgy loner who isolated himself for the sake of it. I just never bothered putting effort into connecting with people beyond acquaintanceship. I believed that was enough. There was another reason, too. I was terrible with people. Having been deaf in my past life, I never formed meaningful relationships. And in this second life, the people closest to me were brutally killed by a demon. So, you couldn't exactly blame me for my flaws. Rengoku knew this and made sure to be vocal about it. Hey, do you know it's really creepy when you stare at people while they talk? The workers told me that's why they didn't like talking to you, Rengoku said. I learned he was honest like a child and could be quite blunt. I liked that about him. Is it? I mused. Yes, and the fact that you never respond to most people who talk to you. You seem to ignore everyone except those who confront you face to face, he said, nodding as if affirming his own words. I had to use my eyes and red lips to understand what people were saying. If they were out of my sight, I couldn't even notice when they spoke to me. Well, tell them I'm sorry for being deaf, I said. His eyes widened, and he stopped walking. You're deaf? He asked, but since he was behind me, I didn't know it. He placed his hand on my shoulder, and I turned to face him. You're deaf? Yes, I'm deaf in both ears. I lost my hearing to a demon, I explained. I could see the shock and apology on his face. Since I had such incredible eyesight, people rarely noticed my deafness. And I never advertised my disability, so misunderstandings were common. I see. I should have noticed, he said. It's fine. It happens all the time, I replied, continuing to walk. Rengoku took a few seconds to collect his thoughts before following. We were heading to another nearby mountain. Mount Fujikasane was filled with wisteria trees, which repelled demons. To hunt them, we had to move to a different location. Rengoku said he wanted to join me, and since I was interested in seeing him fight, I agreed. Now, the two of us were making our way through the mountain road to hunt the creatures of the night. We'd slept in the morning, so we were full of energy. We didn't encounter any demons during the night. Apparently, they knew to stay away from Mount Fujikasane. So, Rengoku and I spent the time wandering under the bright moonlight. We talked quite a bit, mostly about how I could speak despite being deaf and other related topics. As I said, he was a charming man, and I quite enjoyed the time. It was only near dawn that we encountered a demon. I spotted him while we were at a high altitude, running at the base of the opposite mountain. The demon was covered in blood, indicating he'd just had a successful hunt and was rushing home before sunrise. We ran down the mountain immediately, and with my eyes locked on the demon like a hawk, I led us to a route that would intercept him. When we caught up, Rengoku's aura shifted, and his smile faded. He ran past me, gripping the hilt of his sword, and said, "Leave him to me." And that's what I did. I watched as Rengoku rushed at the demon, who tried to flee the moment he saw us. I didn't remember the flame Hashira being a speedster, but he was incredibly fast even at his young age. I took the chance to observe the breathing style in detail. This could help me complete my own. Rengoku caught up with the fleeing demon effortlessly. When he did, he inhaled massive volumes of air, creating a small vortex near his mouth. My purple eyes glowed eerily as I activated the full power of the transparent world. All the secrets of the world were laid bare before me. I saw how Rengoku's lungs expanded to a ridiculous degree. His body began producing an insane amount of heat, boosting his strength. I also observed the pattern of his breath. Unlike my style, where I inhaled to maximize each breath, he followed a well-formulated pattern. His yellow haori with flame patterns lit up, and I was stunned by what happened next. A trail of fire emerged from his mouth, and his katana caught fire. The edge of his sword released a fiery trail that illuminated the forest's darkness. Flame breathing, first form, he declared. Unknowing fire. He swung his blade horizontally, creating a perfect arc of deadly flames. His blade met the demon's neck with a roaring inferno, and the head was severed in an instant. The headless demon fell to the ground, and a few seconds later, his body disintegrated. I stopped in my tracks, staring in confusion. Rengoku sheathed his katana, and the flames died down. I remembered reading that elemental visuals were added in the anime for imagination and did not exist in reality. But what I just witnessed was exactly like the anime. Was it real, or could I see it because of my special vision? Image. Chapter 10. Flame breathing. Seiji's POV. It was beautiful. I had to learn that. Rengoku slowly sheathed his sword, exhaling deeply. I stood frozen until he turned to me, his signature smile blazing brighter than his flames. It's done, my friend. Our night patrol wasn't a waste, he declared, followed by a hearty laugh. I stared at him, my face blank but my mind racing. Breathing styles weren't supposed to grant supernatural powers like encasing a sword in fire. Yet I'd clearly seen it happen. Hey, did you see the flames? I asked. Huh, what flames? He tilted his head, confused. That confirmed it, only I could see the flames when he used his breathing. Do you mean my breathing style? I used flame breathing, he said, his eyebrows lifting. Wait, how do you know what breathing style I used? I never told you. So it was my eyes. My eyes allowed me to see the effects of breathing in ways normal eyes couldn't. It was similar to how I could perceive the colors of gases in the atmosphere if I focused. The transparent world wasn't just about X-ray vision or sharper eyesight. I could see impossible colors, ultraviolet, infrared, radiation, and more. My eyes let me perceive the world as it truly was, without limitations. I've seen a flame-breathing user before, I lied, my flat tone giving nothing away. Oh, I see. I wonder if it was my father or someone else, he hummed. Should we return? The sun's about to rise, he said. The demon's frantic retreat confirmed it. Yes, I replied, and we headed back to Mount Fujikasane. My thoughts returned to my eyes and their potential. Being able to see breathing styles was a massive advantage, especially against another breath user. I could identify the type of breathing, when it was used, and even differentiate its forms over time. It was like a boxer telegraphing his moves through his shoulders. If I could see breathing styles, I could probably see demons' blood demon arts too. That could be a gameger. When Tanjiro fought the lower moons Yahaba and Sasamaru, he could only deflect their attacks after Yushiro helped him see their blood demon art, the arrow. I smiled. I just added a new word to my fighting vocabulary. The next day. Our blades clashed, sparks flying from the impact. My eyes took in every detail, the condition of both swords, the vibrations they released. If I had ears, I'd describe the vibration as steel clashing against steel. His Nichiren blade was well made but paled in comparison to mine, crafted by one of Japan's greatest smiths. His sword hadn't been heated or hammered enough during its creation. It was mass-produced, made by a smith who'd put no effort or passion into it. An ordinary blade. If my eyes were right, I could break it after a few well-placed strikes, exactly 4 inches below the tip. The sword had seen heavy use. The weakness at the tip showed it had been sharpened more there, since that part was mainly used for slicing, making it thinner than the rest. We pushed each other away, neither gaining the upper hand. In that split second, I'd already devised a way to win if this were a real battle. Ha 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 ha. What a strange experience it is to fight you, Rengoku said, gripping his sword tighter. It feels like I'm fighting my own shadow. We were sparring, he'd initiated it after we woke up, wanting to test himself against me. I was more than happy to oblige. Nevertheless, I won't give up that easily, he said, pushing off the ground with such force he seemed to disappear. Rengoku was a talented fighter. As the future Hashira, he was already a monster, even before becoming an official demon slayer. It was no surprise, every Hashira was built differently. I stepped back to throw off his attack. He'd expected me to stay put or charge, so my retreat caught him off guard. His sword still came at me, but it lacked proper distance, and his body leaned too far. He unleashed a flurry of slashes, which I deflected with minimal effort and a placid face. He was strong but inexperienced, especially against another swordsman. He'd trained his entire life to be a demon slayer, not a proper swordsman. After all, demons rarely used swords. You could count those who did on one hand. He had more experience fighting demons who used the bare hands, claws, or other weapons. In contrast, I was a master of kendo, a discipline focused solely on fighting other swordsmen. In this, he couldn't compare to me. There were levels to these things. But he was physically stronger due to his age. Being 1 year older might not seem like much as an adult, but in our teens, it made a huge difference. It was a time of rapid physical development, and that extra year made Rengoku much stronger than me. Ultimately, the sheer difference in our combat power came down to my special eyes. Imagine this. Imagine seeing the world in slow motion. Imagine your eyes could zoom in, capturing every detail. Imagine having X-ray vision, seeing your opponent's muscles, and predicting every move. You know their body better than they do. And imagine your opponent telling you their every plan, their every action. Not just that, they tell you their fighting style, their training, their thoughts, even things they don't know themselves. Of course, they're not actually talking. Actions speak louder than words. That was my world, a transparent world where I could see everything. To me, fighting wasn't fast or violent. It was a conversation, and if it got tough, a debate. My opponent spoke with his actions, and I replied with mine. Every movement held meaning, and we exchanged them, matched them. Flame breathing, first form. Unknowing fire. Rengoku never opened his mouth, but I knew. The pattern of his breaths, the expansion of his lungs, the grip on his sword, it all matched what he'd done last night. He released fire from his mouth, and his sword caught flame. Another giveaway. He'd added a new word to our fight. I smiled, the conversation was getting interesting. I tightened my grip and took a deep breath, activating my own incomplete breathing style, which pushed my physical stats to the limit. Steroid breathing. His burning sword came at me faster and more intensely than before. Maybe it was the visuals, but I felt heat radiating from him. Our swords became blurs as we exchanged lethal blows. The ground shook, and dust clouded the area. I could break his sword but decided not to be an asshole. The dust blinded his vision, and though he knew where I was, he hesitated, afraid of accidentally hurting me. His sword faltered. What a nice guy. I swept his feet with the blunt side of my sword, and he fell onto his back. When the dust settled, he was on the ground, my sword at his neck. I guess I lost, he said, still smiling like a winner. You hesitated. I told you I have good eyes. I could see through the dust, I said. And I couldn't. Winning wasn't worth even a small chance of harming my friend, he replied. He sure knew how to take the joy out of winning. Now I couldn't even gloat. I offered him a hand, pulling him to his feet. I helped dust off his hurry before he started laughing. You're quite amazing, my deaf friend. But I can't help but notice your horrendous breathing form. Tell me, who taught you? He asked, patting my back. No one. I made it myself. Aha, no wonder it's so horrible, he laughed. Hey, I worked hard on it. I don't mean to dismiss your effort, Seiji-san. But you've missed the fundamentals of breathing styles, he said. If you truly didn't have anyone to teach you, how about I teach you my breathing style? He asked, grinning widely, his eyes shining with excitement. I wasn't prepared for that. I was already trying to copy his style, but having him teach me would be even better. But why would he? I thought he'd be more reserved about sharing flame breathing. Was he okay with offering such power to a stranger he'd met just days ago? Why? I couldn't help but ask. If it were me, I wouldn't teach every random person I met. Look at what happened to someone like Keigaku when they gained power. Why not? You're my friend, he said. It was strange how such a simple answer could make so much sense when said by the right person. Rengoku wasn't like me. He didn't have an evil bone in his body, so thoughts like mine never crossed his mind. His naivety was almost stupid in a world of evil and demons. But I couldn't help but be captivated by such innocent sincerity. Right, I said. Friends, ha. I smiled. Image of MC. Chapter 11. Breathing Styles and Training. Seiji's POV. Here's an interesting fact about the future Flame Hashira. Did you know he learned his breathing style mostly from the diaries and manuals left behind by the previous Flame Hashiras? It shocked me at first because I assumed he'd received at least some training from his father. But no, aside from a few pieces of guidance and a beatdown where his father told him how pointless his training was, the man was a useless bum. Don't let him catch me saying that, though. Rengoku still held deep respect for his father and wouldn't allow anyone to badmouth him. He admired his father for all he had done and didn't blame him for how things turned out. A profession like his could break any man, my friend said. His father had been strong for long enough. He had saved enough lives. Now it was Rengoku's turn to carry that burden. That's what he told me. Anyway, let's shift the topic to something more interesting. Breathing styles, just like Rengoku said. I'd been doing them horrendously wrong this whole time. No wonder I couldn't use them properly, let alone create my own. The problem was my simplistic thinking and lack of creativity. I was too focused on logic and what I remembered from the show. I believed you took in huge amounts of air to increase oxygen in your blood, boosting muscle energy and performance. I lived by that statement, and it was wrong. Let me explain it this way. Imagine a breath could be any number, and my capacity for one breath was 10. So I'd go 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 equals 50. I took in as much air as possible, forcing my body to absorb all the oxygen it could. But that was a primitive approach. I learned that unique breathing patterns and correct forms could drastically enhance how my body functioned. Instead of adding breaths, I could multiply their efficiency. 10 times 5 equals 50. Using a proper pattern and knowing exactly what I wanted to achieve allowed me to increase the efficiency of my breaths many times over. What took 5 huge breaths could be achieved with just 2 if the technique was applied correctly. There were other factors too: proper ways to exhale, matching breaths with your heartbeat, and posture. Take the negative number as an exhalation. -10 times -9 plus 10 equals 100. It's all about patterns. Just as you could have a positive effect, incorrect forms and patterns could have a negative one. 9 plus 10 plus 10 times 0 plus 5 equals 5. I hope this comparison makes sense. It's the simplest way I could explain it. In conclusion, breathing styles aren't about lung capacity. They're about forms and the patterns in which you breathe. When I realized this, I almost leapt up and danced in joy. If there's one thing I'm good at, it's learning and observing patterns. After all, breathing styles are a movement, a language of the body. Stop it, that's enough, I said to Rengoku, who had a giant boulder on his back while doing push-ups. You're only breaking your body. Rengoku was a training freak. His intensity almost scared me when I first saw it. It was terrifying because I could see in detail how his body was tearing apart with each set he endured. I'd never seen anyone train so hard and barbarically before. It reminded me of Might Guy from Naruto. In fact, I believe they were the same person in different universes. Instead of shouting, "Youth!" Rengoku yelled, "Set your heart ablaze," while forging himself like a sword. That's the whole point, Seiji. How about you join me? Let me show you that anything is possible if you put your mind to it, he said. No. I wasn't going to endure such hellish training for literally no gain. I could see how my muscles worked, so I trained just enough to stimulate them and allow time for growth. That way, I made the most progress over time. What Rengoku did was counterproductive. He was overtraining, cutting into his own gains in terms of muscle power and bodybuilding. I tried to tell him this multiple times, but he didn't listen. In the end, we agreed to disagree on our training styles. I utilized my gifts to maximize progress, while he used his determination to sharpen both his body and mind. Each style had its pros and cons. Objectively, my training was superior in terms of progress. But Rengoku wasn't just training his body, he was building mental endurance. His freakish intensity allowed him to go beyond his limits when needed, like when he fought Akaza. In the end, it's a matter of choice. Which would you prefer? Hey, this reminded me of scientific training versus ego lifting in the gym. Which method is better? By the way, this doesn't mean I wasn't training hard. I pushed my body to its limits, but Rengoku was on another level. He was a freak. And I believe he'll get stronger his own way. Who am I to stop him when I know he'll grow stronger? 100. Rengoku yelled, standing up with raised hands. I cringed at the muscle tears in his triceps and chest. That would take at least 2 weeks to heal, but he'd probably train again the day after tomorrow. I guess we're persisting through sheer shonen power here. Seiji, let's go for a run around the mountain, he said. I sighed, shook my head, and relented. I guess I could go for a run. A few minutes later, I struggled to keep up with him. He said, run, but what he meant was, sprint as fast as we can around the mountain. Fucking freakish bastard. We trained like that for a week. We sparred whenever we had time, with me always winning. But the thing about beating Rengoku was that he never went close to going all out. His body couldn't handle full power against someone he cared about. I learned flame breathing with Rengoku, and he even let me read the manuals of the previous flame Hashiras. I mastered all the forms in a week, making huge progress, especially since Rengoku demonstrated them for me. My eyes saw everything, making it easier to learn. Though I was far from mastering them, my combat power skyrocketed. We hunted demons at night, and those moonlit moments became bonding time I'll never forget. Then a week passed, and it was finally upon us. The final selection. Chapter 12. The final selection. Seiji's POV. Beautiful. The world was beautiful. But demons corrupted it. Their ugly existence and evil hearts stained this beautiful world. Such beauty did not deserve such filth. So, I would drive them to extinction. I would rid the world of its blemish. And I would start from this mountain. These were my thoughts as I climbed the trail and steps of Mount Fujikasane. The mountain was covered with beautiful wisteria trees from its base to halfway up. The flowers glowed in shades of pink, purple, and lavender, making it feel like I was in a different realm entirely. While there were wisteria trees at the base, halfway up was where they were most plentiful. The place was so bright, brighter than daylight. The wisteria flowers released a sweet scent that made even the simple act of breathing an enjoyable experience. They were soft to the touch, and their beauty made you hesitate to blink. It was a feast for all the senses. I wished I had working ears, as I was sure the flowers would make soothing sounds when the wind blew through them. Ha 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 ha, Seiji, you look drunk. Rengoku tapped my shoulder and said. Yes, my friend, I was drunk. Drunk on beauty. My eyes felt like they were having an orgasm just looking at the scenery. No joke, they were squirting tears. The steps were covered with a thin layer of algae, yet they were extremely clean and well maintained. Red pillars with kanji inscriptions stood at the edge of the steps, giving off a unique Japanese vibe. In conclusion, I was determined to attend the final selection every year. At last, we reached halfway up the mountain, where there was a small clearing with a platform. Rengoku and I were the first to arrive, so we stood under the largest wisteria tree, which also offered a perfect view of the entire compound. We waited as the other participants slowly made their way up the mountain. Rengoku and I judged everyone who climbed, sharing our thoughts on who seemed strong and who had the potential to pass the final selection. I relied on my eyes to judge them, while Rengoku claimed his gut feeling was never wrong. That one looks strong. Look at him, he's covered in scars. Clearly, his heart is burning with determination. He'll definitely pass. Yeah, but it's not just scars. He's missing 3 fingers. He wouldn't be able to hold a sword properly. He fails. Look at that giant of a man. He looks strong. That's just his genetics. His tendons are weak, and his muscles show a lack of proper development. Also, he's too fat. What about that guy? His eyes give me the chills. He's blind in his right eye. Look at that guy carrying a long sword. It's too long, so he has to put it on his back. He looks like he knows how to fight properly. That might be true. His muscles are certainly developed perfectly, which tells me he at least knows how to swing. He might pass. Oh, I know that mask. He's a disciple of Urokodaki, the retired water Hashira. They all have that distinctive mask. He's dead. What? Why? Don't ask. Oh, that girl has inverted nipples. That's rare. Seiji. Oops. Did I say that out loud? In a few hours, the small compound was filled with young warriors who aspired to become demon slayers. They all had that look in their eyes, like students about to face their final exams. Most of them eyed each other like enemies, which wasn't a good thing. We weren't competing against each other for the final selection. Instead, it was about survival, and we might need to work together. Glaring at everyone wouldn't help. After all participants had gathered, a lady with white hair, guarded by 2 demon slayers, walked toward the platform and stood on it. Good evening, everyone, the lady with white hair began, and everyone turned toward her. My name is Lady Amon Ubuyashiki. Welcome, participants, to the Demon Slayer Core Final Selection, she said. Holy shit, it really is her. The badass wife who didn't tremble in front of the Demon King, aka the perfect wife. God, she was beautiful. Her beauty stood out even among the garden of beautiful wisteria flowers. Let us not waste time and get straight to the point. Here on Mount Fujikasane, there are several demons that were captured alive by demon slayers. They are kept here for this event, and the wisteria flowers prevent them from leaving the mountain. She continued. They bloom on this mountain year-round, covering everything from the base to halfway up. But the wisteria ends here, she said, signaling behind her, where the flowers no longer grew. There are demons beyond this point, and they are very hungry. For the final selection, you must survive for 7 days beyond the wisteria's protection. Good luck, everyone. Your trial begins here. After delivering her message, she left the platform immediately, leaving us to venture beyond the safe point. Hey Rengoku, what did her voice sound like? I asked. She sounded normal to me. Although some might say her voice was quite stoic, he said with a shrug. Then, we were all separated into groups. These groups would ascend the mountain from different locations. Rengoku and I had to part ways. Good luck, Seiji. See you in 7 days, Rengoku said with a smile that outshone the glowing flowers for a brief moment. Of course. Just don't hurt yourself trying to save a stranger. Everyone who came here is prepared to die. I said this because I knew he was strong enough to easily pass this test. The only way he could get hurt was if he tried to act like a hero and save everyone, like Sabato did. We can do anything we want, even the impossible, As long as we believe in it, he said, his smile widening. So I can save everyone without getting hurt. I'll just have to kill every demon, then, I said with a smile, and we separated. I was in a group of 10, and we ascended the mountain from the west side. The atmosphere immediately turned gloomy, and a sense of danger prickled my skin as I left the protection of the wisteria trees. This should be fun, I said, my eyes glowing in the new darkness void of the wisteria's light. I could see the demons ahead, sharpening their teeth. Let the final selection begin. Image. Chapter 13. Hand Demon. Sage's POV. Let the final selection begin. But first, I needed a sword. I only had a regular katana with me, but I required a Nichiren blade if I wanted to pass this trial. So, I did what any rational person would do. I looked around for someone to rob. My eyes quickly scanned the people nearby, and I locked onto the weakest of the bunch. He was a thin young man, around 20 years old. His body told me he barely trained, and the slight shiver in his legs showed he was afraid. I didn't know why he'd even come to the final selection, but he was doomed to die here. So, I did him a favor. I walked up to him and struck his neck, knocking him out. You can try again next year if you're truly determined, I said, dragging his body down the mountain and back to the safety of the wisteria. I pulled out his Nichiren blade and inspected it. It was in good condition, aside from a few small chips. This will do. The other participants who saw what happened chose to stay silent and keep the distance. I took the blade and started climbing up the mountain with the rest of the group. It didn't take long to encounter demons. The place was infested with those vile creatures. 3 demons appeared. One approached with a confident stride and a wicked grin, another perched atop a tree, and a third leaped at me from a nearby bush. It was a poorly planned ambush, but from the smirks on their faces, I could tell it had worked for them before. Why fight a participant alone and risk dying when you could overwhelm them 3 to 1? It was less risky, and they could share the spoils equally. Demons were intelligent creatures, and that's what made them all the more disgusting. They could strategize and knew exactly what they were doing. I spun the Nichiren blade in my hand and, without even glancing, sliced off the head of the demon who leaped at me. There was a pause as the demon fell to the ground with a thud, his body quickly disintegrating. The atmosphere shifted instantly, and the remaining demons seemed to rethink their approach. Meanwhile, I examined the sword in my hands. It was effective, but in my mind, it was too effective. The demons died too easily. It felt like they didn't suffer at all as I ended their filthy existence. I could understand now why Shinobu preferred using poison to kill demons. It wasn't satisfying at all. I shook my head, pushing aside the unhealthy thought. Let's just assume they have a sad backstory so I'm not so pissed about their easy deaths. I looked at the 2 remaining demons and realized they were talking to me. I'm going to enjoy ripping out your insides and, I stopped reading their lips right then. I preferred silence to nonsense. I lunged at the demon closest to me. Before he could react, I sliced both his legs and appeared behind him. He let out a guttural scream that I could feel through the vibrations alone. I changed my grip on the sword and swung the Nichiren blade upward, slicing him cleanly in half. The demon in the tree immediately turned and fled, but my eyes never left him. I smiled when I saw the desperation on his face, the face of someone who realized they'd messed up. I sprinted through the forest, silently following the demon. I made sure to avoid leaves and twigs, staying unnoticed. After running several meters, the demon finally stopped and jumped down to the ground. Despite being a demon, his chest rose and fell as if he were tired. I picked up a rock and threw it in the opposite direction. The sound caught his attention, and he looked toward it with a spooked expression. I closed the distance while his back was turned, standing right behind him. He froze. He sensed my presence. I didn't kill him right away. I let him suffer in fear and terror. Sweat dripped down the side of his face, and after several seconds, he slowly turned his head to look at me. That's when I ran my blade through his neck. My eyes captured every detail of his fearful face as his head fell to the ground, quickly turning to ash. The night was still young, and I had 7 more days to go. How delightful. I started moving through the forest again, searching for more demons. They must have enjoyed the final selection. It was the time of year when they could hunt humans. In fact, I was sure it was a much anticipated event for the demons on this mountain. But not this time. During this 1 week, I would show the demons what it felt like to be the victim. What was the trial again? Survive on a mountain full of demons for 7 days. Let's rephrase that. Try and survive me for 7 days, you foul creatures. 2 days later. I moved through the forest non-stop during the night and slept during the day. Mount Fujikasen was vast, and with frequent demon attacks, I hadn't covered the entire area even once. But tonight, things were different. I hadn't encountered a single demon, as they'd learned to run away from me. They couldn't even think about hunting participants anymore, they were too busy fleeing from me. Demons had great senses, so there wasn't much I could do when they actively avoided me. I wondered how Rengoku was doing. Strangely, I hadn't seen him in the past 2 days. I wouldn't say I was worried, but it would bring me relief to see him. I walked through the forest at my own pace until I came to a halt at a clearing covered in blood. My eyes analyzed the broken terrain and the bloodstains. From the clues, I could piece together what had happened here. I turned to my right and saw broken trees and displaced bushes, clearly indicating that something large had passed through. The blood followed the trail, so I decided to investigate. A few minutes later, my eyes finally caught the demon responsible. The air was thick with the smell of rotting corpses, but I didn't react, not with what I was seeing. A gigantic demon, the color of green vomit, sat in a clearing he'd made. His appearance was an abomination. Multiple hands protected his neck like a scarf, and other arms protruded from his body. But what truly caught my attention was the dozen dead corpses lying in front of him. I watched as he picked up one of the dead participants, slowly tore off the clothes, and then enlarged one of his hands to rip off the corpse's head. He peeled back the head to completely rip out the spine, blood spurting non-stop. The demon threw away the head, still connected to the spine, before opening his wide jaws and devouring the human in 3 bites. The demon was having a meal, and from the way he savored the taste of the humans, it was a peaceful one. I stepped out of the forest and into the clearing he'd made for his meal. His head immediately turned toward me, and I could see him shake with a chuckle. Another one just delivered himself to me. How convenient. I was going to kill him. Sorry, Tanjiro, and whatever plot this world had, but I wouldn't allow this creature to live for even a second longer. Image. Chapter 14. Rest in peace. Seiji's POV. What are you staring at, brat? I don't like your eyes. They creep me out, the hand demon said, mock shivering. It was tricky to read his lips, since, well, he didn't really have any. But I managed to decipher his words from the vibrations and the movement of his massive throat. His form was an abomination, ugly and haphazardly put together. His grotesque features felt like something a psychopath would create, only to find it revolting even by their standards. What a bad day to have eyes. The stench of 2-day-old corpses mixed with the demon's foul odor made me want to vomit. For the first time, I regretted training my other senses to be so sensitive. I hate it. I hate him. Not answering. That's fine, the hand demon said. The arms wrapped around his body began to move. My eyes struggled to keep up. His body was so unlike a human's. Muscles formed out of nothing, bones snapped into unpredictable directions, and his blood flow was unnatural. It didn't feel like I was looking at a living thing. It felt like I was staring at water. For the first time in a while, I couldn't read body language. Fighting wasn't a conversation. Actions spoke, but it was all gibberish. I guess I'd finally found a new weakness I'd always had. Demons like him, with no concrete form, evaging. I'll make you scream, the demon roared. 5 hands shot toward me at ridiculous speed. My eyes widened as my brain tried to process the hands reaching for me. They were still connected to his body but elongating at incredible speed. Still, the world moved in slow motion for me. I reacted swiftly, without wasting a single movement. I spun the blade in my hand and, with the swiftness of the wind, sliced through all his hands at different joints. But it wasn't over. Where I'd cut one hand, 2 more took its place, reaching for me. I rolled to the side and sprinted away as the hands pursued. They were unbelievably fast. I could see how the demon was controlling them, forcing them forward, but it didn't make sense. I concluded it was his blood demon art, something like flesh manipulation. I planted one foot on the ground and turned to face the incoming hands. I counted 13. Taking a deep breath, I used my own breathing technique to enhance my physical stats. Learning from before, the demon didn't attack blindly. Instead, his arms turned into boneless whips, lashing at me from all directions. But my enhanced body matched his speed. I parried the flurry of attacks, my arm becoming an afterimage as I blocked 50 strikes in 5 seconds. You're strong, but not strong enough, the hand demon screamed. I couldn't hear him, but the sharp gust of wind from his shout sent a tingle down my spine. The hands morphed into one giant hand, casting a shadow over my entire body. I leapt back as the hand slammed into my previous position, leaving a crater where I'd stood. Then the demon tried to be sneaky, sending his hands underground. I could see his barely concealed grin as the hands reached right under me. They burst from the ground, trying to grab my feet, but such attempts were honestly pathetic to my eyes. I did a backflip and sliced through the hands with ease. "Ha, you saw that coming. That's new," the hand demon said. My feet landed on the ground, and I straightened my back, taking a bold stance. I was afraid of many things. But an ugly piece of shit like him wasn't one of them. "You've got some tricks, and you look young. You have a bright future as a demon slayer. This will make it all the more satisfying," he screamed, turning himself into a ball. His hands wrapped tightly around his body. More arms grew from him, wrapping around until he became a sphere. "That's new," I said. I didn't know he could do that. Then he rolled toward me at incredible speed. His body was huge, so I pushed off the ground with all my strength. I jumped above his rolling form, dodging him. A hand shot out from his body, but I saw it. I swiftly cut it off before it reached me. His body rolled into the forest, felling trees in its path. The ground shook, leaving a trail of dirt in its wake. "You can't run any," he screamed, rolling toward me again. He'd gained momentum and was even faster than before. My eyes released a purple glow as I analyzed his body. I learned the pattern of his rotation and, in a split second, calculated where and when he'd leave an opening. A scene of the future played in my mind, and I knew I could cut off his head in one clean strike. I acted on that future. I gripped the sword in my hand. It was brittle and would surely break if I didn't land a clean slice. I inhaled deeply, and flames erupted from my mouth. My body heated up. Here's the thing about learning a breathing style with eyes like mine. After mastering each form, you become familiar with it, like you would with words. Once you learn a word's meaning, you can use it in different sentences. Similarly, after mastering one form, you can apply it in different attacks. Flame breathing, esoteric art, first form. My legs propelled me forward like a bullet. Unerring fire. The timing was perfect. My eyes and flawless movement allowed me to slice the demon precisely when his head was on top, while he was still rolling rapidly. The top of the ball, his head, was neatly chopped off. A trail of fire followed my movement, creating a mesmerizing display of light. The demon's body immediately lost strength and stopped rolling. His head fell to the ground with a thud, eyes widening in shock as he watched his own body stumble into a pitiful fall. "What happened?" he asked himself, his final words. I released a long breath and watched the Nichiren blade break into pieces after my attack. I figured the old sword wouldn't hold up much longer, especially after executing my technique. Esoteric art literally means secret or unique art. A breathing user can accomplish such arts after fully mastering their breathing style. They create their own forms or versions of an attack. Rengoku's flame breathing 9th form and Jiu's water breathing 11th form are examples. However, I'd shortcut that and created my own forms after learning just one. I was just special like that. The flame breathing first form, unerring fire, is an attack where the user dashes toward the enemy and delivers a horizontal slash from a blind spot. It requires great timing and situational awareness. My version, esoteric art first form, unerring fire, was even deadlier. I predicted the future with my eyes and attacked based on that future with impeccable timing. The perfect movement ensured there wasn't even a millimeter of mistake in my attack. I struck at the right place, at the right time, without flaw. It was certain death. I threw away the sword hilt and relaxed my body. The aftermath of an adrenaline dump was always exhausting. I stood still for a minute before walking to the dozen corpses the hand demon had stored for his meal. I swiftly checked their bodies and took their Nichiren blades. Then I spent the rest of the night digging a hole to bury them. By sunrise, I'd buried all of them. After holding a short funeral and paying my respects, I left the barren clearing. I hoped they rested in peace, knowing I'd avenged the deaths. Chapter 15. A Demon Slayer. Seiji's POV. The rest of the trial went by relatively easily, as the hand demon was likely the strongest demon on the mountain. It was just a test, the final selection, so naturally, the demons weren't particularly powerful. I realized I was overqualified for this trial, which wasn't surprising. Even Tanjiro hadn't struggled much, and he'd only trained for 2 years, while I'd trained for 7. But I didn't slack off during that week. Instead, I made the most of the test and all the training opportunities it offered. A demon's body is harder to read than a human's, and my fight with the hand demon made that abundantly clear. A man's history is etched into his body. You can tell what kind of movements he's done most by his muscle composition, which in turn reveals his occupation. Farmers have strong backs and forearms, smiths have broad shoulders and triceps, artists have long, nimble fingers and unique tendons, and so on. Even with swordsmen, you can deduce a lot, their strength, dominant hand, weaknesses, and more. But demons are trickier. Their regenerative abilities and the way they grow stronger by consuming humans make them far less predictable. That said, there are rare demons whose bodies show signs of training, though they're 1 in 100. I used this opportunity to learn more about demons and their bodies. I looked to Yoriichi as an example. He, too, was born with the transparent world, and it was his deep understanding of the human body that led to the creation of breathing styles. He also developed sun breathing techniques specifically to exploit Muzan's weaknesses. This kind of research, gaining a deeper understanding of my own body and my enemies, is just as important as standard training. Aside from studying demon physiology, I also learned a lot about their behavior and habits that week. Specifically, I mastered how to hunt demons when they were actively avoiding me and how to locate their hiding spots during the day. Here's an interesting fact. Most demons hide in caves or shady areas during daylight. But many have no such places or can't reach them in time. So, what do? They bury themselves underground. Like this guy, I said, pointing to a patch of freshly dug and closed soil. I focused my eyes slightly and could see through the ground. Sure enough, a demon was sleeping underground, like a corpse. Sometimes, they even dig entire tunnels to escape the sunlight. I drew my Nichiren blade and stabbed the ground. He was buried shallowly, so my blade pierced his throat. His body disintegrated, and he died without even realizing it. On the 6th day, I ran into Rengoku. We decided to team up and hunted demons together. By the last night of the final selection, there was hardly any need to hunt. Most demons had been annihilated, and the survivors hid so well they never resurfaced, even at night. And just like that, the trial ended. I passed, with flying colors, I might add. Welcome back to all the remaining participants, and congratulations to all of you. I'm glad to see you're safe, Lady Ammon said as the sun slowly rose on the horizon. The final selection had ended. Aside from Rengoku and me, 12 other participants had survived the week. The number surprised me, as I recalled only 6 or so passing when Tanjiro took the test. But then it made sense. There were more survivors because I'd gone on a demon killing spree. From today onward, all of you are officially demon slayers. First, we'll issue uniforms, so we'll need to take your measurements. Please be patient and stay put. Secondly, your rank will be engraved on the back of your hand. I'm sure most of you aren't familiar with the demon slayer ranking, so let me explain, Lady Ammon continued. She went on to describe how the ranking worked and what was required to advance through each rank. The ranks are as follows. 1. Kano. 2. Kanoto. 3. Hino. 4. Hinoto. 5. Sushino. 6. Sushinoto. 7. Kano. 8. Kanoto. 9. Mizuno. 10. Mizunoto. We were all assigned the rank of Mizunoto and would have to climb from there. There were also the Hashira, or pillars, but those positions were said to be nearly impossible to achieve for most. Well, not for me. Haha, I'll definitely reach the rank of Hashira and take on my father's duty, I declared. And for him too. Now, on to the next topic, Lady Ammon said, clapping her hands. Her action put me on alert, and I focused intently. I noticed a disturbance in the air and turned around. 13 crows were flying toward us, each landing on a participant, except me. A bird did approach me, but it wasn't a crow. Instead, it was a strange sparrow with a color combination of red, white, and black. What stood out most were its eyes, absolutely dead, like those of a lifeless fish. The bird radiated an air of indifference. I glanced at Rengoku, who had a normal crow perched on his shoulder. He wore his usual radiant smile as he told the bird he was looking forward to working together. Hey, I think mine's broken, I said, pointing at the sparrow hovering above my head. Rengoku gave me a look before bursting out laughing. It fits you, he said. If I didn't know he was so nice, I'd take that as an insult. I finally offered my hand, but instead of perching on it like a normal bird, the sparrow sat on my palm as if it were a nest. I spent a minute staring into its dead eyes, expecting it to say something, but it remained silent. Fuck. Did they really give me a mute bird just because I'm deaf? I mean, it doesn't make a difference, but come on, how am I supposed to use it as a messenger? The fact that it wasn't a crow didn't bother me, as I knew some demon slayers had different birds. Zenitsu, for instance, also received a sparrow. But at least give me a functional one. Is that too much to ask? Wait, is this what discrimination feels like? These are your Kasugai crows. They will be your valued partners as demon slayers and will act as messengers to facilitate communication, Lady Ammon explained. I observed the other participants and their crows. Though I expected it to be tricky, reading the words coming from the crows wasn't difficult. Their throat contractions and tongue movements were almost identical to humans. So, what's your name? I asked, looking into my sparrow's dead eyes. Quote dot. Quote dot. You don't have a name? I asked, and that raised two issues. 1. My sparrow didn't have a name. She was a she, and she was asking me to name her. 2. How the hell was I able to communicate with her? I knew the Demon Slayer world had supernatural elements, ghosts teaching characters, demons with magic spells, but I really wanted to know how I could understand her so completely. She remained still, so maybe it was something about her eyes. Nope, they were as dead as ever. I shook my head and stopped overthinking it. Instead, I focused on coming up with a name for her. How about I call you Crow? I suggested. She looked me dead in the eyes and said it was too lazy, and she wouldn't appreciate being associated with her annoying colleagues. Raven, then, I said. It was close to what she was, a Kasugai crow, and her dead eyes and attitude reminded me of Raven from Teen Titans. From now on, you're Raven, I declared. She jumped onto my head and made a nest in my hair. Now for the final task, all of you shall select an ore to create your Nichiren blades, often referred to as Kologging katanas, Lady Ammon said. It will take anywhere from 10 to 15 days for your blades to be ready, but you shall choose the ore now. The mountain workers brought out various ores, and participants selected the preferred ones one by one. When it was finally my turn, I asked, Lady Ammon, will it be possible to write a letter to my smith so they can make a few changes to my blade? Lady Ammon nodded. That will be possible. Just make sure not to ask for something outrageous. I thanked her and proceeded to pick the largest ore in the pile, as what I was about to request would undoubtedly require more material than others. You may all leave the mountain as official demon slayers, Lady Ammon said once everything was done. And that day, at the age of 13 years and 10 months, I became a demon slayer. Chapter 16. The Wandering Swordsman. Author's note. It's Saturday, arguably the worst day of the week for faithful readers. Most authors take a break today, leaving barely any updates for readers to enjoy. So, here's a long chapter to make up for it. Seiji's POV. After the final selection ended, Rengoku and I had to part ways. He had a home to return to and a father eagerly awaiting his return. He seemed excited to share the news with his father. He left the same day the trial ended, leaving me alone once again. You truly feel the value of someone's presence in their absence. Rengoku was loud, so his departure left an eerie silence, strange, considering I'm deaf. I pondered my next steps for the following 10 days. Returning home felt like a bad idea, as it was a 14-day journey. I had no relatives or friends to visit. Heck, I didn't even have a sensei who trained me to become a demon slayer. Otherwise, I would have sought him out for an embrace, pretending I'd accomplished something significant. In the end, it was just me and Raven, who had decided to make my hair her permanent nest. Luckily, she was smart enough not to soil my head. I'll shave my head if you get too annoying, I said, walking along a path leading somewhere I didn't care to know. Raven gently tapped my head and replied that I'd never shave my head because I cared too much about my looks. Quote dot. She was right. As I've said before, I appreciate beauty, and I wouldn't like myself if I weren't well maintained. I don't mean genetically, but in how I present myself. I'm always clean and neatly groomed. I wouldn't tolerate even a single hair out of place or a blemish on my clothes. It might seem excessive to most, but not to me. I'm also picky about my attire, preferring clothes that suit me perfectly. Whatever I wear must be neat, tidy, and fit flawlessly. In my past life, I was called a poor fashion enthusiast. So, yes, I'd never shave my head because I look better with wavy, exotic purple hair. Where are we going? Raven asked, tapping her tiny feet on my head. Nowhere, I replied. We're roaming the mountains and forests like a ronin, waiting for my first mission and Nichiren blade. And, of course, we'll kill any demons we encounter. A question might arise. How do I communicate with Raven? The answer is Morse code. I learned Morse code in my past life and again in this one. During my Shugako exams, which I took out of necessity for my inheritance, I chose Morse code as a substitute for the Viva Voce exam, which I couldn't take due to my deafness. It was a special privilege to select any subject in place of Viva Voce because of my disability. When I first met Raven, she sat on my palm and communicated through Morse code. I did not realize it at first, but I quickly caught on later. So, it had nothing to do with her eyes or psychic abilities. I was surprised the demon core thought that far ahead. They not only selected a bird that could communicate with me but also knew details about me, like my knowledge of Morse code and my exam choice. When I asked Raven about it, she said it was a natural reaction. I was famous in Japan as a prodigious kendo master, so when the master heard I was becoming a demon slayer, he took special consideration for me. The same goes for promising demon slayers recommended by Hashiras or retired Hashiras. What else could I say? I was impressed with Wabuyashiki. I spent days roaming the mountains, sleeping during the day and traveling at night, like the demons I hunted. There's a universal rule: you never find what you're actively searching for. The same goes for demons. When you search for them, they're nowhere to be found, but when you're most vulnerable and least expect it, they appear. I managed to slay 5 demons in 10 days. I encountered 3 in the mountains and found the other 2 terrorizing a village, which I stayed in to eliminate them. There's nothing notable to say about these demons. They were strong, likely on par with the hand demon, but not strong enough to challenge me. They weren't as tricky to fight either. The 2 with blood demon arts had basic powers. One could grow blades from their body, and the other had hair that turned into sharp tendrils. Nothing I couldn't handle. But the 6th demon was somewhat remarkable. He could completely hide his presence, and in this encounter, I learned the true value of my bird companion. I have no ears, and while my other senses are sharp, they're limited. My eyesight is my greatest strength, but it's confined to my field of vision, 180 degrees. That leaves a wide blind spot behind me. I can sense when something approaches by the movement of air, but by then, it's usually too late. Luckily, I have another pair of eyes on top of my head. _. It meant the letter D, but the way she tapped my scalp told me everything I needed to know. D. Danger. I pivoted on my heels and turned just in time to draw my katana and block the demon attempting to plunge his claws into my back. His claws met my blade, and a bright spark lit up the darkness. With the alertness of someone close to death, I redirected his hand and sliced at his neck. My movement was flawless, even in panic. But a strange sight greeted me. My sword went right through his neck, but I did not slice him. It was like cutting through a phantom. It was a blood demon art. I did not know how it worked, so the best action was to retreat and create distance. That's what I did. I leaped to the side and swung 3 warning slashes to keep him at bay. I stopped when I was about 5 meters away. You blocked that, the demon said, tilting his head in an odd mix of anger and confusion. No one has ever blocked that. I dread the day I'm in an ugliness competition with a demon. I'd never win. Because what the hell was that? Can you wait while I vomit? I said, my voice laced with disgust. Bile rose in my throat. Before me stood a demon with crossed eyes and mucus in his eye sacs. He had spiky, sand-colored hair and wore only an obi and a torn yukata that barely reached his knees. Putting aside his ugliness and asymmetrical shape, I analyzed him to determine his strength and blood demon art. It wasn't hard to see what he was. All truths lay bare before my eyes. His body is intangible. I could tell instantly because many signs pointed to it. First, I couldn't see inside his body, and my X-ray vision failed. Air phased through him, and I could see it clearly. There was also a strange aura surrounding him, indicating something unusual. His blood demon art was intangibility. That explained his silent steps and lack of scent. Both senses I'd trained to ensure no one could sneak up on me were useless against him. I don't like the way you're looking at me, human. Do you think you'll survive just because you're a demon slayer? He asked. I have a taste for demon slayers' flesh and have killed countless of them. He burst forward with incredible speed, leaving cobweb-like cracks on the ground from his powerful legs. The air exploded, and so did he. I predicted the action, but only at the last few seconds. Not being able to see inside his body was a clear disadvantage. But when he pushed off the ground, his intangibility ended, and his body became visible. I learned a lot from that, and he revealed much about himself. He could become intangible but couldn't attack while doing so. He also couldn't make parts of his body intangible. It was all or nothing. He had 2 beating hearts in his chest, common for strong demons, boosting their physical strength and durability against piercing attacks. A glance at his muscles told me he was built for speed but lacked the sheer strength of most demons his caliber. Flame breathing, second form. My breath turned into flames, and my sword left a trail of fire as I swung vertically upward. It created a perfect arc, rising like the sun. Rising scorching sun. The demon's smile widened, and he turned intangible. His movement became bolder, and he phased through my attack and me. I immediately turned to see him shoot toward the forest. He landed horizontally on a tree before launching himself at me again like a cannon. The branch was blown apart due to the sheer force. "You're dying," he screamed. I turned my blade sideways and threw a horizontal slash, but like before, he phased through my blade and me. "Ha ha." He laughed like a hyena. He thought he'd gotten to me. He was infinitely amused seeing my attacks become void against his blood demon art. My lips curved too. This must be his usual strategy. Normal people couldn't differentiate when he was intangible, so he'd attack from multiple angles, keeping opponents on edge until he found an opening. Or better yet, he'd tire them out. Humans aren't like demons. Exhaustion is a significant issue for them. And they couldn't ignore his bluffs since they couldn't tell if he was intangible, and he was too fast to even think. And if they let the guard down, thinking he was faking another attack, he'd make them regret it by taking their head. It was a flawless strategy, as the enemy would inevitably fall. Unless they're me. Because I had an advantage, I could tell exactly when he was intangible and when he was real. He swiped his sharp claws at me, and I barely dodged by moving to the side. The lack of air resistance made him move at extreme speed. I drew my sword and managed to cut his leg as he shot past me, but it was a minor injury for a demon like him. "Be careful. Fighting me isn't the time to be lost in thought," he said with glee before springing at me again. But this time, it was a fake attack. He bounced around the forest, destroying many trees in the process. He faked another 3 attacks, which I pretended to respond to. Then he decided he had a chance and went for the kill. "Die," he screamed. Stupid to give away his position like that if he truly intended to attack. That's exactly why someone other than me would expect another fake attack. But I saw it clearly. I saw how his body turned physical, resisting the air. He launched at me with the boldest and fastest movement. Everything was so exaggerated that it seemed like another fake. But I tightened my grip on the hilt of my sword. Flame breathing, esoteric art, first form. My legs propelled me like a bullet, and my body left a trail of yellow fire that lit up the darkness with hope, symbolizing the victory of light over dark. Unerring fire. It was the ultimate attack of precision and timing. My movement was so smooth and perfect it looked like water breathing instead of flame breathing to spectators. The demon could only stare and witness his own death reflected in my blade. His ugly eyes met my purple eyes at the last moment, and he found no mercy. Even the tiniest fiber of my muscle did not hesitate as I chopped off his head in a single swing. It was at the perfect moment when he wasn't intangible, from the exact angle where he wouldn't see it coming, and at the right distance that gave him enough time to despair but not enough to act. "Disappear, vermin," were my final words. Then his body disintegrated without even hitting the ground. Flame breathing was extremely effective, not only boosting the user's strength but also enhancing the Nichiren blade's power. I sheathed my sword, sinking my last breath with the gentle click of the sheath. Without another word, I continued my journey. It had been 11 days since the final selection, so I should be getting my first mission and Nichiren blade soon. And just as I thought, a swordsmith arrived in the morning. Image of MC. Author's note. Raven plays a crucial role in covering Seiji's greatest weakness, his limited vision. I thought hard about how to realistically make him overcome this. The idea of giving him sensitive touch to sense vibrations like elephants or snakes crossed my mind, as did giving him strong instincts or a heightened sense of smell to detect danger. But in the end, I didn't want Seiji to become unreasonably overpowered too quickly. He'll have weaknesses and strengths, and he'll use every tool to compensate for his weaknesses and capitalize on his strengths. Thanks for reading. Join my Patreon to read 2 weeks ahead and participate in polls and group chats. Patreon. Emmanuel_Capricorn. Chapter 17. Nichiren Blade. Third POV. Your sword has arrived, young man. Get up. I could barely make out his words, a mix of drowsiness and the sudden brightness after keeping my eyes closed for too long clouding my senses. I quickly scanned my surroundings. I was under the shade of a giant tree in the Kabayatsu Mountains, exactly where I'd fallen asleep after the sun had risen. "Good morning, sir," I said, yawning as I stretched my limbs. I rubbed my eyes to ease the heaviness of my eyelids. The man in front of me sighed. "It's afternoon," he corrected. A glance at his attire confirmed he was a demon slayer core swordsmith, complete with the signature mask. Then, "Good afternoon," I amended. "I know you young demon slayers work hard, but it's not healthy to live like that. A man is meant to work during the day and rest at night," he said. Through his mask, I could tell he was on the older side. "I'll keep that in mind," I replied, though I doubted I'd follow his advice. I didn't believe I could sleep peacefully at night. Anyway, here's your Nichiren blade, he said, revealing the massive sword he'd been carrying behind him. I stood and took the sword from his hands. It resembled a typical katana but was twice as long, with a hilt designed for two-handed use. Never thought someone would order an odoki for demon slaying. I've only made such swords for ceremonial purposes, so I was unsure. But I lucked out on this one, he said, a proud smile visible behind his mask. It should be deadly if you can use it correctly. Odoki, a Japanese equivalent of the claymore, a long katana meant to be wielded with both hands. Rarely used in combat due to its inefficiency. The sword's length extended past my shoulder. I drew it from its sheath, admiring how the sunlight reflected off its sharp blade. It's beautiful, I said, captivated. I could see in vivid detail how well crafted the blade was. It made me look at the smith with renewed respect. What's your name? I asked. I needed to know. Hattori Kanazuka, he replied with a nod. Thank you for making my blade, I said, bowing respectfully. His smile widened, and he waved me off. No, I was just doing my job. I should thank you. Your request gave me something new to work on instead of the usual swords. Enough pleasantries. Come on, draw the sword. You know why we swordsmiths deliver Nichiren blades personally. We want to see the color change. Don't keep me waiting, he said. Right, I replied, fully withdrawing the blade from its sheath. I held it easily in one hand, and as I did, the sword began to change color. Starting from the base, the transformation spread to the tip. A dark purple blade. That's magnificent. Purple swords are rare, he said, a satisfied grin visible behind his mask. Coming all the way here was worth it. About that, how did you find me? I asked. Well, you definitely didn't make it easy, he said, giving me a stern look. I replied with an awkward smile. I was always on the move, so it must have been quite a challenge. The bird led me to you, he said. That's when I noticed Raven wasn't on my head or in the nearby trees. A sparrow. Shaped like one, at least, he replied, and I chuckled. Raven was black and red, unlike any other sparrow. She must be busy with her duties at the moment. I was supposed to receive my first mission after getting my Nichiren blade. How about you show me how you plan to use the sword, young man? I've been curious ever since I got your request, he said, stepping back to give me space. I smiled politely and nodded. The reason I'd specifically asked for an odoki wasn't just to look like a cool anime character. It had a practical purpose. One thing I'd noticed in battle was that I wasn't suited for close combat. My fighting style relied heavily on my eyes, so I needed my opponents to stay in my field of vision. If they got too close, it was harder to see every part of their bodies. I would have made an excellent marksman, but since that wasn't an option, I had to find an alternative to increase my range. The solution I came up with was wielding a long sword. That way, I could keep my opponents at a distance where I could see every part of their bodies. The extra range would also help me anticipate their moves better. All in all, it was an advantage for me. I wielded the sword in one hand. It was nearly 3 times heavier than a normal Nichiren blade, but since I was stronger than most, it didn't affect me much. Puberty also played a role. I planned to capitalize on this phase to get stronger, developing my strength to the point where wielding an odoki would feel like wielding a normal blade. The odoki wasn't just heavier but longer than a katana, typically making the wielder slower and sometimes weaker. Not for me, though. I had perfect movement, which allowed me to wield the odoki with ease. It eliminated the wasteful movements that usually came with using such a sword. I also balanced its weight perfectly, making the heaviness nearly irrelevant when swinging. My eyes allowed me to read my opponent and the rhythm of battles perfectly. With this, I had impeccable timing, which made up for my lack of speed. In short, I had perfect precision and timing to counter the odoki's disadvantages. As one warrior once said, precision beats power, and timing beats speed. Ready? I asked, not waiting for his reply. I raised the sword above my head and swung it down at the tree that had provided me shade. I inhaled deeply to boost my body and used every fiber of my muscles to apply torque to the blade. I sliced the tree with deadly precision. A small whirlwind erupted from my attack, and the tree neatly slid off its trunk, falling to the ground. But that wasn't all. I'd also cut down 2 more trees behind the one I'd aimed for. My swing was so perfect that it created a wind blade capable of cutting down the additional trees. The sound of the trees hitting the ground sent a deep vibration through the earth. Wow, Hattori exclaimed, clapping his hands. I see, you've mastered the wind-breathing style. No wonder you dare wield a longsword. Thank you, I still have much to learn, I said, seeing no reason to correct him. I wasn't a user of wind breathing, nor had I used any breathing style in my attack. After that, I performed other movements, and as expected, I did not struggle much with the sword. Though it would take time to become as familiar with it as a normal katana. Hattori and I chatted briefly afterward. I asked him in detail how he'd made the sword and inquired if he could craft a bow and nicher and tipped arrows for me in the future. It was a genuine idea I had for a weapon. In return, he asked if he could examine my normal katana. I agreed and handed it to him. It was made of regular steel but crafted by one of Japan's greatest smiths. This is truly a work of art. Who was the swordsmith? He asked, inspecting the sword. Gassen Sadakazu. He was given the title, Imperial Artist, the highest honor the Japanese government can bestow on an artist, I said. If not for my kendo master's request and my victory in the nationals, I would never have been able to hold Gassen's work. They're in great demand. I'm sure they are. Wow, he said, examining the katana's tiniest details. It felt like he could see just as much as I could. If you'd like, you can keep it. I no longer have use for the sword, and it'll just be a burden during my travels, I offered. Well, if you say so, he said, his eyes shining with excitement. Hattori left soon after, as he had other deliveries and a ton of work back home. I was left alone in the forest, so I took the time to train with my new sword again. I also strapped the sheath to my back, as I couldn't carry the sword on my waist like a normal katana. The afternoon sun slowly began to set on the horizon, and Raven returned after being gone all day. She immediately perched on my head, bringing news from Demon Slayer headquarters. My first mission was to travel to Tokyo and investigate the recent disappearance of demons in different wards of the city. I was also told I'd been sent to Tokyo because of my knowledge of the city and its areas. I'd spent most of my youth in Tokyo, as my kendo dojo was located there. The master also said I could take the chance to visit my home if I wished. Talk about a great boss. And there was one more piece of news. Sushinoto. Cool. I'd been promoted to the rank of Sushinoto. Apparently, they'd counted all the demons I'd slain after the final selection. Raven had reported back to headquarters, and they'd decided it was only fair to promote me to Sushinoto since I'd killed 6 demons, half of whom even had blood demon arts. It seemed reaching the rank of Hashira wouldn't be too hard. A smile graced my lips as a new, interesting idea formed. How about I beat Muicha's record of becoming a Hashira in just 2 months? Well, what an interesting challenge. My Gen Z blood boiled just thinking about it. This was literally what we grew up with. Speedrunning. Watch me speedrun to Hashira. It sounded like the title of a YouTube video, or in this case, the title of a chapter. Image of the sword. Author's note. I request stones. I want more people to read my story, so help me climb the rankings. And I'll give you more chapters. Equivalent exchange, just as the universe intended. Chapter 18. First mission. Seiji's POV. The journey to Tokyo was brief, as it was the first time I traveled with a clear destination in mind. I moved through day and night without stopping, relying on steroid breathing to boost my speed. In just one day, I covered a distance that would have taken others a week. I didn't pause to hunt demons or even to eat or sleep. I simply ran, pushing myself until my body felt like it was on fire. It was almost as grueling as the time I trained with Rengoku. Many would call me foolish. Why overexert myself when I was about to face demons in Tokyo? Wasn't I just lowering my chances of survival? Absolutely. But that's what set a speedrunner apart from the rest. While others saw recklessness, I saw the 6 days I'd saved. In all honesty, I knew my limits. I'd never push myself to the point of vulnerability. So, when I finally reached Tokyo, I was out of breath and tired, but that was the extent of it. I told you not to underestimate the insanity of a speedrunner, Raven, I said with a smile, gazing at the vibrant streets of Tokyo in the evening. The city was a marvel. Bright lights, trains, and bustling streets in the early 20th century. Tall buildings lined the busy roads, side by side. It would take more to impress a modern guy like me, but I could see why village boys like Tanjiro would be awestruck. I glanced at my reflection in a nearby window. Raven's expression remained unchanged, deadpan, as if the spectacle meant nothing to her. I shook my head in defeat and joined the pedestrians. I'd reached Tokyo, but I still didn't know which ward I was in. Spotting a bright light in the distance, I ran toward it. My first task was to figure out my location, then head to the ward with the missing people. The city's inhabitants were mostly dressed in traditional Japanese clothing, though many wore suits or Western-style attire. Modernity was still tied to Western countries, so some aspired to live like Westerners. World War I hadn't heavily impacted Japan, and Tokyo thrived with a sense of prosperity. Foreigners were plentiful, and businesses boomed. As I walked, my Demon Slayer outfit and the massive sword on my back drew stares. I glared at the men who looked too long and winked at the women. What can I say? I was an attractive guy. And just as some women appreciated my looks, I appreciated theirs. Now, imagine having X-ray vision and encountering attractive Japanese women, even housewives. I won't reveal what I did. My lawyer advised against it, but let's just say some impressive assets were hidden beneath those modest yukatas. Their shapes were concealed but longed to be free. And it wasn't just about assets. Some had cake. Huge, jiggling cake, perfectly proportioned, vanilla flavored. But that wasn't all. Some had long, flowing legs. A few boasted wide hips, small waists, and perfect love handles. And one of them had 7 hearts and 5 brains. Wait. Pause. My body froze, every function halting for a moment. My cheerful mood vanished, and the world faded away as my eyes locked onto her. She was stunning on the outside, but I could see the ugliness within. No, not her. Him. His outer flesh was a disguise. Beneath it lay the most cursed being in the world, the source of all my hatred. My breath caught, and rage swelled in my chest. I wanted to destroy him, to chop off the head of that stain on the earth. It took every ounce of my willpower to hold back. Doing nothing had never been so difficult. I stood still as he walked toward me, then past me. I will kill you, I whispered, unaware until he turned to glare at me. He recognized my Demon Slayer outfit and understood my words. He knew I knew what he was. A crushing pressure settled on my shoulders, a killing intent so thick I tasted blood. My body trembled. It was the same feeling from that night. He was so much stronger than me, it hurt to exist in his presence. His nails extended into claws, and he swiped at me. I dodged, the fastest movement I'd ever witnessed, even for a casual swing. He seemed surprised by my reaction, his feminine features twisting into something sinister. But we were in the middle of the street, so he decided to leave me alone, for now. He walked away. I remained frozen, my heart pounding with fear, anger, panic, and hatred. Sweat drenched my body. Fuck. 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 I clutched my chest and forced myself to keep walking. The encounter was brief but eye-opening. It showed me how much stronger I still needed to become. Eventually, I collapsed and vomited on the ground. My heart raced, and my vision blurred. What was happening? It was an anxiety attack, but why? Was it because he reminded me of that night? Even so, why was I writhing like a worm? I thought I'd grown past this, thought I'd become stronger. No, no, no. The images flooded my mind. I closed my eyes, but I couldn't stop seeing them. I will kill him. I will kill him. I swear, I swear. Muzan Kibuchuji. Chapter 19. Let's talk. Seiji's POV. Holy fucking shit. If I got a penny for every time a demon came into my life and made me want to roll over and die, I'd have 2. It's not much, but fucking hell, why did it happen twice? What were the chances that, on my very first mission as a demon slayer, I'd encounter the literal Demon King? The odds were so slim that it was a clear sign of my remarkable fate in this world. For real, this was the kind of shit that only happened to main characters. Or the side character who dies early to show just how scary and brutal the main villain is. Hopefully, I'm neither, and I haven't realized the third option yet. I found myself in the Asakusa ward of Tokyo, the same place where the Demon King was hiding in plain sight, blending in with the thousands upon thousands of humans living here. I figured it must be pretty easy for him, since he could shapeshift on command. Hell, he was in his female form when I met him, but I was sure he'd changed by now. I quickly headed in the opposite direction from where Muzan went and prepared to leave the city. Honestly, fuck the mission. The culprit behind the missing people was obviously Walmart Michael Jackson over there, and I was like 5 years and 10 more training arcs away from being at his level. So, I decided to leave the city as soon as possible. Easily the simplest decision I've ever made. I placed a hand on my heart and felt my heartbeat slow down. It was embarrassing to admit, but his mere presence reminded me of the most traumatizing event of my life. I completely lost my cool because of that, which was totally uncool. I knew I had serious unresolved issues from both lives, but I didn't like confronting them. Instead, I found a loophole, ignoring all those problems or traumas. I learned that if you ignore them long enough, most wounds heal with time. This one would too. When I become the strongest demon slayer and drive the demons to extinction, all these traumas will be solved. Like I said, I just need time. Time will heal me. Watch where you're going, idiot. A man on the train screamed at me as I barely crossed the rail. I wanted to scream back that I couldn't help it. I was running for my literal life, but I chose to keep my mouth shut and continue leaving the city. Third POV. Muzan Kibuchuji stepped into an alley and quickly shifted his form into that of a man. He placed a hand on his face, grinding his teeth in anger. He'd been found out. He thought he'd hidden perfectly, but the boy had instantly recognized him as a demon. He didn't know how the boy had done it, but he knew he needed to eliminate him before the information spread. He snapped his fingers, and immediately, 2 of his loyal servants appeared, kneeling beside him. They were high-ranking demons he kept around to run errands, whether it was killing people or bringing him humans. They weren't as strong as the 12 demon moons, but together, they had the potential to rival one. There's a demon slayer in the city. Purple hair, purple eyes. He's a lower-ranking slayer, so dispatch him quickly and bring me his head, he said. Instantly, the 2 demons disappeared to complete their mission. It wasn't often their lord gave them such important tasks, so the 2 demons, Sasamaru and Yahaba, sprinted across rooftops to find their prey. It didn't take them long. In fact, Yahaba didn't even need to use his eyes to track their target. Watch where you're going, idiot. They heard a scream. When they looked toward it, they saw their target, a demon slayer with purple hair. He was running out of the city, trying to escape them. Not a chance. Hey Yahaba, do you think we'll become part of the 12 Kazuki after this? Sasamaru asked in a giddy tone. She was so obsessed with becoming one of the 12 Kazuki that she was ready to do anything. She'd even gone as far as calling herself one due to her obsession. Maybe, but I know the Lord will reward us with his blood if we complete this mission, Yahaba replied. They both smiled as they followed the demon slayer outside the city. They planned to attack him then. And so they walked to their deaths. Seiji's POV. I was being followed. Which was a lot creepier than it sounds. Especially when it was a bird on top of my head telling me I was being followed. At first, I thought it was Muzan, but then the bird told me they were 2 demons, a girl and a boy. Relief washed over me when I realized it wasn't the demon lord. Instead of coming after me himself, he'd sent 2 of his underlings to deal with me. And from the description, I knew exactly who they were. Sasamaru and Yahaba. They were among the earliest demons Tanjiro encountered in the series. If I remembered correctly, they were lower-ranking moons. But I wasn't too worried. They were pretty weak, killed by Tanjiro before he even mastered sun breathing. If I had to rate my current strength, I'd put myself on par with a weak Hashira. I was strong enough not to fear the lower moons. So, when I reached a safe distance from the city, I stopped in my tracks. I slowly drew the sword from my back, turned around, and gazed at the 2 demons following me. Weak. The word slipped out unintentionally. Just by looking at them, I could tell they were nowhere near the level of a lower moon. Maybe they were even weaker than when Tanjiro met them. But that wasn't a bad thing. At least with them here, I'd have an excuse to claim the mission was accomplished. They remained perched on a tree, their faces confused. They wondered how I could see them in the darkness and whether I'd truly noticed them or was just bluffing. Nevertheless, after a minute, a Temari ball shot toward me, and I smiled. It was a good time to vent all the shitty emotions I'd just gone through. Who knows, this could be like therapy. Let's talk. Chapter 20. First mission accomplished. Seiji's POV. Let's talk, I began, my voice cutting through the silence. I unleashed my frustration, anger, and hatred in my opening words, a violent, direct, and bold way to start the conversation. My body sliced through the air, resisting its pull as I swung my sword horizontally. The sharp sound of metal cutting wood echoed in the quiet night, just before a hurricane roared to life. 7 trees fell in an instant, including the one where the demons stood. My eyes glowed purple in the darkness as I carefully observed their reaction to my daring move. The demon boy, Yahaba, remained calm and collected. He activated his demon art, and a red arrow carried him away as the tree collapsed beneath him. The demon girl, Sasamaru, on the other hand, was quick to anger. Her eyebrows furrowed with rage, and she conjured a Temari ball in her hand. She hurled it at me as she fell, disregarding her own safety in her desperation to strike back. It was a typical trait for demons with great regenerative abilities, so it didn't surprise me. The Temari ball shot toward me with the speed of a bullet, which, I admit, sounds terrifying, but I dodged it with a casual tilt of my head. To my eyes, There was no difference between the speed of a bullet and a crawling baby. I allowed the demons to land on the ground, using that moment to examine them more closely. In that brief instant, I discerned their blood demon arts. It might have taken longer if I hadn't already known their abilities from my past life, where I'd watched Demon Slayer. This was merely a confirmation, not a real analysis. Sasamaru, the demon girl, could conjure multiple Temari balls, which she threw or kicked toward her enemies with bullet-like speed. Her balls were capable of penetrating cement walls. Yahaba, the demon boy, had eyes on the palms of his hands. These eyes were incredibly sharp, able to track even footprints. His blood demon art allowed him to conjure invisible red arrows that interfered with the vector of matter. Objects affected by the arrows were pulled in the direction of the arrows. I'll have your head for that. Sasamaru screamed, her face twisted in anger. But I noticed that, despite her short temper, she was overdoing it. I'll rip out your heart and feast on it, she added with a creepy grin, veins popping out of her forehead. She was trying too hard. A distraction, I thought, glancing at Yahaba, who was sneaking away before hiding behind a tree. They must have done this often, as they were experts at it. Too bad I caught on quickly. Besides, I could see through trees, so there was no hiding from my sight. If I remembered correctly, Sasamaru and Yahaba worked extremely well together. Yahaba would control Sasamaru's Temari balls, turning them into projectiles akin to homing missiles. The combination of their blood demon arts made him a tricky adversary. Yahaba was physically weaker and acted as Sasamaru's support. That's why he fled immediately. Sasamaru conjured Temari balls out of thin air, a huge, nasty smile on her face. She pulled her arms back, and the balls shot at me with blurring speed. But this time, it was different. The balls were guided by Yahaba's invisible arrows, swerving and moving at impossible angles. Boom! The sound barrier shattered. The arrows seemed to increase the power behind the balls as well. How neat. Luckily, the invisible arrows weren't invisible to my eyes. Instead, they acted as obvious indicators of where the balls would hit. Prediction had never been easier. Flame breathing, third form, I declared. Blazing universe. Inferno wrapped around my blade, and my body heated up to an unnatural degree. My breath turned into flames as I leapt into the air. The Temari balls followed, but with a twirl of my blade, I sliced them in half. Since the balls were part of Sasamaru, they disintegrated upon contact with my blade. I crashed beside her, my eyes wide. Sasamaru was clearly surprised that I hadn't been caught off guard by the homing attack like most people would have been. My blade created a burst of hot air, sending a shockwave through the surroundings. Everything lit up in golden fury as my blade bit into her body. I cut diagonally across her chest. Her body offered no resistance to my blade. It was like carving through cake. Ah! Sasamaru released a shriek that would surely have burst my eardrums if I weren't already deaf. I smiled and jumped back as 12 invisible red arrows came at me with brilliant speed. They were quick, and though they lacked piercing power, they could drag me around like a ragdoll if they caught me. So I twirled my long sword, creating a protective barrier. The flames took the form of a flower, and I deflected every incoming arrow with ease. Flame breathing, fourth form, I continued. Blooming flame undulation. Flame breathing was known as an aggressive fighting style, requiring explosive strength and inhuman stamina to maintain. But the fourth form was created solely for defensive purposes. I flicked my sword to clean off the blood and watched as Sasamaru healed herself. Not only did her body heal, but she also grew 4 more arms from the sides of her torso. I'll burst your head for that. She screamed at me. I raised my sword, a smile tugging at my lips. The enemy attacked again. 6 Temari balls, guided by Yahaba's arrows, rushed at me at the speed of sound. It was a sight to behold. Anyone else might have soiled themselves. Their actions were desperate and angry. They'd underestimated me at first but now realized they were the ones who should be afraid. They were giving everything they had. I could tell at a glance that they were inexperienced, likely having only recently turned into demons. They had solid teamwork and a genius way of combining their abilities, but that was it. They didn't really know how to fight, nor did they understand the dangers that came with it. I assumed all their previous opponents had been too busy dealing with the combined attacks, so they'd never been confronted head-on. Multiple battles like that had given them false confidence. My arm and sword became one, blurring into multiple afterimages. I focused on my breath to maintain deep concentration and maximum reflexes. My eyes and mind were quick. It was just my body that had to catch up. 6 deadly balls bounced and swerved in ways that defied physics. Yet their objective was the same: to put a hole in me. But under the shocked gazes of the enemy, I deflected the incoming projectiles with ease. My arm disappeared in rapid movements as I blocked every attack. I also used the shiny, reflective side of my sword to glance behind me, allowing me to block attacks coming from every angle. I enjoyed the expressions on their faces as they watched the scene unfold. Despair. Because no matter how angry they were, no matter how frustrated, and no matter how much they desired strength, I was always angrier, always more frustrated, and my thirst for power was far greater. I'd simply learned to control these emotions. I molded them into a blade that cut down demons unfortunate enough to cross my path. I am Millennia, Blade of Miquella, and I have never known defeat, I said with an amused smile, slowly walking towards Sasamaru. The sound of my blade moving at incredible speed and the clanging of Temari balls being deflected filled the air. Sparks surrounded me. What are you doing? Sasamaru screamed. Can't you see? I'm entertaining myself because, truthfully, your strength is. My legs propelled me forward faster than sound. Boring. In an instant, I was behind her, and the deed was done. Sasamaru's head slid off her neck, and I crushed it under the sole of my shoe. Her body disintegrated after a few seconds. I disappeared again immediately, my movements untrackable by the naked eye. Years of training and perfect technique allowed me to achieve feats of incredible speed. You have good eyes, I said from behind Yahaba. He was sitting atop a tree, trying to hide from me. Yahaba leaped off the tree, his palms with eyes blinking. Multiple arrows shot toward me. Let's see who has better eyes, I said, easily cutting through the invisible arrows. He was telling me everything, his strategies, his fears, and even things he hadn't realized yet. I spy with my little eye, something red, I said, lunging to my left and swinging my sword. I was just in time to catch Yahaba, who, with the help of his arrows, was trying to fly away from me. He was attempting to escape to the city, knowing I wouldn't follow. But alas, he couldn't escape me. His body was bisected at the waist. While his lower body continued flying toward the city, his upper body fell to the forest floor. Blood spurted out, painting his vision red. He began regenerating his legs and tried to push himself back up, but I cleanly cut off his head as I landed. He died like an animal in a sacrificial ritual. Well, that was therapeutic. Don't you agree, Raven? I asked as she flew toward me and perched on my head. Mission accomplished, I said with a smile, watching Yahaba disintegrate into ash. Now let's get the hell away from Tokyo and continue our speedrun elsewhere, I declared, resuming my journey. I had accomplished my first mission. But there was no rest for a speedrunner. In less than 2 months, I had to become a Hashira. And I wouldn't accept anything less. Chapter 21. A Familiar Face. Seiji's POV. It's been more than 3 weeks, nearly a month, since I completed my final selection. And it's been a week since my first mission, where I encountered a demon who turned out to be none other than Michael fucking Jackson. Speaking of which, he wasn't even in his Michael Jackson form when I met him. Thinking about it now, I felt scammed and robbed. Why did I have to face the zesty Demon King instead of Michael Jackson? My disappointment was immeasurable. On a positive note, it seemed I wasn't some side character destined to die a dog's death just to showcase how cruel and evil the main villain was. It's been a week, and I'm still alive, sending demons to hell. Remember those 2 guys who died after barely touching Muzzen's shoulder, or the woman he tortured by injecting his blood into her until her cells melted? Yeah, I was glad not to be one of them. Anyway, the missions I've taken on since then have all gone extremely well. In fact, I've completed a total of 9 missions in just 1 week. Let that sink in, 9 missions in a single week. For reference, Tanjiro took days to complete 1 mission. Meanwhile, I've been knocking out more than 1 mission every single day. Truly, it's a feat worthy of a speedrunner. However, the main reason I've been able to complete missions so quickly is my eyes. Of course, they're my special cheat. Imagine this. You're a demon slayer, and your mission is to investigate a village with recent missing persons. You arrive, but everything seems normal. You're forced to stay and investigate for days, waiting for the demon to act up again before you can slay it and save the village. I don't have to go through that. With my eyes, I can see the marks of demons and their blood demon arts. Villages like these usually have demons with such techniques terrorizing them. So, I can easily find the demons and figure out what's going on without wasting days. Even if the demon leaves no marks or uses blood demon arts, they often have underground tunnels or hideouts. My eyes allow me to locate those places too. Then, slaying the demons is relatively easy since I'm already above lower moon level, I think. No demon has posed a serious threat to me yet. The only time-consuming part is traveling and getting new missions. Speaking of which, I have a new Kasugai crow. Raven proved too valuable as a companion to constantly act as a messenger. She sits on my head, acting as an extra pair of eyes at my back. Plus, I was getting missions too rapidly. Raven couldn't be bothered to fly back and forth constantly, so I got a new crow. An actual crow this time. In the end, Raven became my service animal, which was both funny and fitting, considering I'm deaf. A new mission has arrived. The Kasugai crow squawked, circling above me. I think the higher-ups have realized my true strength and my drive to climb the ranks, because missions have been coming non-stop. You'd think they'd give me a break at some point, but nope, they just keep coming. Honestly, it puts a smile on my face. They say, do something you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. It's true, I'm doing just that, so there's no mental exhaustion for me. Where to? I asked the crow. You need to slay the demon living on Mount Taramai. It's been hunting humans who pass through the mountain, but it's very adept at hiding, so this will require tracking, the crow explained. Complete the mission as quickly as possible, and I'll return. Caw. With that, the crow flew away. Well, shit. It's a mission that requires tracking down a demon. I hate these kinds of missions because they take longer than just going to a village and killing the demon there. I'm adept at tracking, thanks to my eyes and the experience I gained on Mount Fujikasane, but it still takes more time than I'd like. Still, the Demon Slayer Corps seems to recognize how well I handle these missions compared to others, so they've been assigning me similar tasks lately. Whatever, I'll make do. How many demons will this make? Counting Yahaba and Sasamaru, it'll be my 15th. 35 more to go before I become a Hashira. Oh, I can see it happening in less than a month. How exciting. Raven, do you know the way? I asked. In response, I felt 1 short tap, 2 long taps, and 3 short taps on my head. Yes, she knows the way to Mount Taramai. Lead the way, I said, and disappeared under the bright midday sun. My goal was to reach the mountain by nightfall and quickly slay the demon. If it hunts humans passing through the mountain, it should attack me too, or at least get close enough for me to chase it down. Let's go. Seiji's POV. Mount Taramai. Oi, I called out. Not to bother you, but that's my demon you're killing, I said, my usually plain voice tinged with displeasure. Did I really travel all this way just for someone else to steal my kill? I thought I wouldn't experience this after coming to this world, since League of Legends hasn't even been created yet. But here he was, an old man so short you'd mistake him for a child. He had a wooden prosthetic leg on his right side. The prosthetic was a bit longer than it should be, hinting that the old man wanted to appear taller than he actually was. He had white hair and was balding, but I had to admit, he had a gorgeous mustache. All in all, I wouldn't say he was ugly, but he was definitely funny looking. Ah, a demon slayer, the old man exclaimed, taking a huge breath that released streaks of yellow lightning. Would you mind giving me a hand? I'm having a hard time reaching his neck, he asked, holding out a small Nichiren blade, a wakizashi. In front of him was a demon, likely my target given where I was. The demon was tall and thin, his frame suggesting he hadn't eaten in years. His bones protruded from his sickly body in a horrific way. Like every other demon, he was ugly. But what really caught my attention was the old man. I think I know him. I racked my brain as the old man and the demon clashed again. The old man was winning but struggled to reach the demon's neck, which was pretty funny. With only 1 leg, leaping wasn't an option, and there were no trees around to use as a foothold. When the old man took a deep breath and lightning crackled around him, the memory finally clicked. Right, it was him. Zenitsu's master. What was his name again? Jigoro Kawajima. Chapter 22. New Sensei. Seiji's POV. Jigoro Kawajima. I read his name off his Haori. There's no way I could have remembered it otherwise. He was too much of a minor character for me to recall after so long. Young man, Jigoro called out, dodging the attacks of a demon who had transformed his arms into long blades. Was that his blood demon art? Turning parts of his body into weapons. I studied the demon's biology carefully and concluded he wasn't a threat. He could turn his limbs into steel blades by concentrating his blood in specific areas, but he couldn't transform multiple parts of his body simultaneously. What truly placed him in the harmless category, though, was his simplicity. You don't want to be simple when facing me. I drew my sword from my back and, with a crack of my neck, charged at the demon. He instinctively took a step back, his arms raised in defense. I'd anticipated his move long before he made it. I struck precisely where the steel blade met his flesh. My sword cleaved through his arm and then his neck. He had no time to react. My action was resolute, my message clear. Disappear. Answer, the demon's head and severed arms fell to the ground. By the time I sheathed my sword, his body had disintegrated, vanishing from existence. One less demon in the world, a step closer to a perfect world. Fuck them. Oh, you're quite the swordsman, young man. Jigoro exclaimed, I totally misjudged you, ha 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 ha. The same goes for you, old man. You might be tiny, but you sure can fight, I replied bluntly, my casual tone making the jab more effective. He visibly flinched. He might be small, but the old man was a formidable fighter. Even without my intervention, he would have slain the demon eventually. I expected nothing less from the former Thunder Hashira. Tiny, I'll have you know I used to be average height when I was young. It's just that old age has shrunk me, he said defensively. My eyes see through all lies. Not only that, I could reconstruct his prime physique by observing his current state. At most, he was 2 inches taller in his youth. Right. Why do I get the feeling you don't believe me? He asked. I do, sir. Really? Of course. You do then, ha 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 ha. He laughed, twirling his long mustache. What's your name, kid? He asked, strapping his short sword back to his belt. Seiji Shigen, I replied. Seiji Shigen, what does it mean? Seer of truth, ruler of will. Jigoro analyzed the meaning behind my name, but there was no exact interpretation. My name could signify many things in kanji. I'm not sure what my parents intended. They died before I could ask, I said. A demon killed them, he guessed. Yes, how did you know? Bah, whose families aren't killed by demons? It takes a unique kind of hatred, one that only comes from losing loved ones, to become a demon slayer, he said with a nod. I see. Enough about that. What I want to know is which one of us old goats managed to create a monster like you. He said, rubbing his chin as he scrutinized me. I'd say you're already at the strength of a Hashira. How old are you? 14. Well, 13 years and 11 months to be exact. God damn, those poor demons, ha 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 ha. I'm certain you'll be the greatest nightmare 10 years from now, he said, amused. So, tell me, who trained you? No one, I said. I trained in kendo under Master Naito Takaharu in Tokyo, but that was it. I never had a mentor for demon slayer techniques. You're not messing with me, young man. Positive. Well, that puts you in a completely different league, he said thoughtfully. And it disproves my earlier speculation that you're as strong as a Hashira. Without a breathing style, you'll never cross that threshold. I wisely decided not to mention how I'd mastered flame breathing in just a week. After a long silence, the old man suddenly broke into a wide smile. Beneath his harmless expression, I detected greed, like a jeweler who's found a diamond in the mud, ready to be polished. Tell you what, kid. My name is Jigoro Kawajima. Former Hashira, also known as the Lightning Pillar or the Roaring Hashira, he said with no small amount of pride. And if you're willing, I'd be more than happy to train you and pass down the secret art of thunder breathing. He grinned at me. So, what do you say? I'd love to, I replied. It was a no-brainer. In my opinion, thunder breathing was one of the strongest breathing styles, even among the original 5. Not only that, I'd already mastered flame breathing, so thunder breathing seemed like the logical next step. After all, fire and lightning often share similar affinities in fiction, like in Avatar. It would also expand my arsenal, giving me more ways to kill demons. The thought of killing a demon so quickly it couldn't even pray for forgiveness brought a smile to my face. Without that chance, they'd go straight to hell. But, I added, I won't be able to start now. And why not? He asked. I stayed silent for a moment before explaining my plan to become a Hashira in less than 2 months. At first, he thought it was ridiculous, but when he realized I was serious, his attitude shifted. He said it was always good to challenge oneself and that he respected my goal. So, can I come back to you in a month or so? I asked. There's no need for that, he said. I'm quite free myself and have no students at the moment. You can follow me on my missions. You're already physically capable, so I'll only need to teach you thunder breathing. If you spare me 3 hours a day, it'll be enough, he explained. I remained silent, studying him in a new light. He was a kind old man. The reason he wanted to follow me wasn't desperation to teach me. It made no sense for him to trouble himself just for a few hours of training each day when I'd already said I'd seek him out later. The real reason was that he wanted to ensure I survived. My goal was reckless, even if he respected it. To go on consecutive missions without rest or growth, just to rank up quickly, was unwise. It screamed of the reckless, burning passion of youth. And Jigoro wanted to make sure I lived by accompanying me. He could assist in fights or advise against actions that put me in too much danger. In the end, he wanted the new generation to be safe, especially someone with talents like mine. Are you sure, Gramps? Can you even keep up with me? I asked, glancing at his prosthetic leg. Nonsense. I was the fastest Hashira, and I'd leave you in the dust even today. He waved his hand dismissively. Well then, I said, bowing. Thank you. I'll be in your care. Same to you, Jigoro said with a smile. Something felt wrong. Bowing was a sign of respect. You lower your head below the person you're bowing to, a symbol of humility. But Jigoro was too short. Even when I bowed, my head was still higher than his. So I lay face down on the ground. Stop insulting me, brat. Chapter 23, Thunder Breathing. Seiji's POV. Thunder breathing was fast, unbelievably fast. Fighting felt like a conversation, where my opponent and I exchanged words in the language of the body. With my eyes, I could perceive, and often predict, their movements. Every action had a pattern, every motion hinted at both the past and the future. But all of that went out the window the first time I faced a thunder breather. Jigoro's speed caught me completely off guard. It was like trying to argue with a rapper. I could see his next move, I knew how to counter it, but my body simply couldn't react in time. Every time, I ended up dead. You saw me, Jigoro said from behind me. I hadn't noticed him because my eyes were still fixed on the residual lightning from his attack. Eventually, I turned toward him, my eyes wide and mouth agape. That was way too fast, I said. If he was this quick now, I couldn't imagine how much faster he must have been in his prime. It was a humbling experience, realizing there were others besides Muzan who could pose such a threat. If he attacked me from behind, my head would roll off with ease. I'd have no time to react. Stop acting surprised like I was the one who just did something impossible. Jigoro yelled, pointing his finger at me. I tilted my head. Your eyes followed me. How is that even possible? He demanded. That was the first form of thunder breathing, the fastest form. I don't understand, I replied. If you knew my eyes followed you, it means you could also see me while moving at that speed, right? No, he said, sweat dripping from his face. Everything was over in an instant for me. But I've fought for over 4 decades and performed the first form of thunder breathing thousands of times. The one I just executed felt different. I could feel your eyes on my body, a sensation I've never experienced before. Yeah, well, I scratched my cheek. I told you I have very special eyes. No, you said your special eyes let you read lips even though you're deaf. You never mentioned being able to track someone moving at the speed of sound. He countered. This changes everything. Ha ha. He laughed, his excitement palpable. Should I be concerned that he was this happy during our first training session? Kid, I'll turn you into the strongest thunder breath user in the history of demon slaying. Ha 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 ha. Answer, my training began after Jigoro demonstrated thunder breathing to me. 2 weeks later. Perfect movement. That was the ability I'd honed after years of relentless training. It allowed me to engage only the necessary muscle groups, conserving energy while executing each move with extreme precision. This skill let me alter my movements mid-action, like changing the meaning of a sentence after already speaking the first words. Though I lacked superhuman strength like Gyomei or Mitsuri, I could match their feats by perfectly controlling my body and the force it generated. But thunder breathing was the opposite of that. You have to use every fiber of muscle in your legs to explode in an instant. Utilize all your strength in one moment, Jigoro explained. Honestly, it felt like a stupid way to fight, the major downside of thunder breathing. I couldn't stress enough how much injury it could cause. Even without injury, your body fatigued quickly, leaving you unable to fight for long. In a battle of attrition, thunder breathing was the worst, while water breathing was the best. That's what Jigoro told me. The more I learned about water breathing, the more I wondered if I should have started with it. It seemed to match my style perfectly. Instead, I began with styles completely opposite to my nature: fire breathing and thunder breathing. It was fine, though. Both were powerful, and my goal was to master all 5 major breathing styles anyway. We'd get to water breathing soon. I'd learn all 5 and create my own style, taking the best from each to forge the ultimate breathing technique. That was the end goal. And with it, I'd ruin Muzan Kibuchuji's entire career. But let's stay on topic. Thunder breathing, though a direct contrast to my fighting style, wasn't too difficult to learn. It took me twice as long as flame breathing, but eventually, I got the hang of all 6 forms. With my eyes, learning thunder breathing's unique patterns was straightforward. I copied Jigero's breathing patterns, just as I'd done with Rengoku. The only challenge was the concept itself, which contradicted my style. Get ready, Jigero said, and I nodded. I crouched, lowering my center of gravity as much as possible. I tensed my leg muscles, ready to explode like a spring. My head tucked in to minimize air resistance as I took a deep breath. Blue lightning crackled around me, and the air vibrated with the power in my legs. Thunder breathing, first form. Thunderclap and flash. It took time, but I finally grasped the concept. Thunder breathing was based on the principle of impulse, the impact force exerted over a specific time. The shorter the time, the greater the impact. Imagine pushing someone with 100 newtons of force slowly over a long period. They'd barely feel it. But apply that same force in a millisecond, and they'd fall, ribs likely broken. Similarly, thunder breathing applies all the force your legs can generate in a short time, allowing you to explode at incredible speed over a short distance, around 10 meters. For longer distances, you'd need to execute the technique multiple times, like Zenitsu did in the series. I pushed off the ground with every ounce of strength my legs could produce in that fleeting moment, engaging every muscle fiber. Perfect movement allowed me to achieve this feat. I blitzed toward the stick Jigero held above his head. The sound of my legs pushing off the ground rumbled like thunder. In an instant, I sliced the stick in half and appeared behind him. I released a breath of steam as I slowly sheathed my sword. Incredible, Jigero whispered in awe. The first form of thunder breathing was the most important. It encapsulated the style's principle, so mastering it meant mastering the rest. The power of the other forms depended on how well you executed the first. I'm happy to hear that, I said, my face twitching as my legs felt ready to buckle. They were fatigued beyond belief, not just from one attack, but from 2 weeks of constant training. You mastered it, Jigero said, examining the bisected stick. He turned to me, a smile creeping onto his face. You mastered thunder breathing in 2 weeks. I don't think I'll ever see that again in my life. I'm glad to have witnessed it, he said, tears pooling in his eyes as he looked at the rising sun. I think if anyone can end this war and kill the Demon King, it's you, Seiji. I'm truly glad to have been a part of it, he added. I bowed deeply. Thank you for all your teachings, Master, I said sincerely. Though I couldn't hear my own voice, I hoped it conveyed my gratitude. I have nothing more to teach you. From here on, it's up to you to advance your skills, he said. Goodbye, young man. I guess this is where we part, Jigero said, his back to me as he walked away. The sun climbed higher in the sky. He waved goodbye. Thank you for everything. I hope we meet again, Gramps. I yelled, uncharacteristically loud to ensure he heard me. Ha 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 ha. No, thank you, Seiji. He replied, turning to face me again. His smile matched the sun's brilliance, brighter than when we'd first met. Thank you for giving this old man hope again, he said, laughing. I fell into thought. I see, that's what it was. His smile now held hope. Had never truly believed the war between demons and humans would end soon, but after training me for 2 weeks, his outlook had changed. Now, he genuinely hoped it would end, believing I'd be the one to end the demons. I'd inspired that hope in him. My breath hitched as I watched his figure disappear. Hope was such a powerful thing. It had driven me through my darkest times, losing my family, my hearing, and finding myself in a strange world. Hope was the only thing that pushed me toward tomorrow. Hope that things would get better. Hope that I'd find family or love again. Hope that I'd be happy tomorrow, just as I was yesterday. That's why everyone keeps fighting, isn't it? Hope. I'll create a better future for this world with my blade. I swear. Chapter 24, Shinobu Kocho. Seiji's POV. Total concentration breathing, or constant breathing, is a technique where the user of a breathing style consistently employs their method to enhance their body at every moment, whether asleep at night or eating during the day. Practitioners maintain a deliberate, purposeful breathing pattern that keeps them in a superhuman state. They heal faster and grow stronger. Even among demon slayers, few can master this advanced technique. It demands a powerful set of lungs, achievable only through rigorous training. I recall Tanjiro, the main character, struggling with it initially. But surprisingly, I never had trouble with constant breathing. In fact, I've been doing it since the beginning, even with my incomplete breathing style. This was mainly because, although I never formally learned a breathing style, I trained my lungs from a young age, knowing how crucial they would be later. Most of the time, I use my own breathing style, steroid breathing, as it enhances all aspects of my body. While it lacks distinct forms, steroid breathing excels in constant breathing. However, for speed and travel, thunder breathing constant proves superior. Though it doesn't improve my senses or other abilities, it compensates with a sheer increase in speed. With thunder breathing, traveling became much quicker and easier, allowing me to complete missions faster than ever. During my 2 weeks of training with Master Jigoro, I did not neglect my missions. I often used demons as practice dummies. That's why, now, 9 days after Jigoro left, I'm on my final mission to become a Hashira. I've killed a total of 49 demons, I said with a smile. After this mission, I'll finally be promoted to Hashira. It's been 47 days since I passed the final selection, roughly a month and a half. With this, I've broken Gyomei and Muishiro's record of becoming a Hashira in 2 months. Honestly, I was excited. Who doesn't love climbing the ranks? The sun was setting on the western horizon, its bright yellow light softening into a warm orange. People finished their work to return home before dark, while demons waited impatiently for the hunt to begin. But as demons hunt in the night, so do I. The mission this time was straightforward: slay a demon in the Ia Valley. Many lower-ranked demon slayers had died trying, which is why they assigned the task to someone they considered as strong as a Hashira. The demon was bold enough to remain in the valley despite 3 failed attempts to kill him. That told me he was confident in his strength. I should expect a tough fight. This would be fun. After a few hours of traveling, I reached the Ia Valley. It was a narrow valley nestled between 2 mountains. The valley was thick with vegetation, and the Ia River flowed through it, providing fresh water for plants and animals. However, its steep gorges and dangerous terrain made the valley isolated. This puzzled me. Why would a demon live here? There were no nearby humans for it to feed on. I stood atop a mountain, looking down on the land. Despite the darkness, my eyes pierced through it as I searched for my prey like a hawk. But before I could locate the demon, my eyes caught something, or rather, someone else. Is that? I asked myself, narrowing my eyes. Then I leaped off the mountain, falling into the valley. Raven pecked at my head in anger before flying off. The wind rushed past me as I descended. Nearing the ground, I used the tall trees to slow my momentum and landed gracefully. I landed close to her. Little girl, why are you here? I asked the girl who had caught my eye. It's dangerous, I added, observing her. Now that she was closer, I confirmed my suspicion. She had dark black hair that faded to lavender at the ends. Her eyes were hazy purple with no pupils, giving them an insect-like appearance. She wore a white and purple haori, her hair tied into a bun with 2 strands framing her face. Her small frame and youthful features made sense together. Ha, who are you calling a little kid? You look the same age as me, she said, turning to face me. I paused abruptly. Damn. She's pretty. I stared. Maybe too long. What the hell are you looking at, creep? Your eyes are creepy as hell. It's amazing how personality can drag down one's beauty. Not a nice thing to say, but understandable, I guess. For the record, I did not use X-ray vision. She had nothing worth peeking at yet. She was just a small girl. But she had potential. Pause. I'm a demon slayer, and I'm here to kill the demon living in this valley. But who are you? I asked. She seemed taken aback. A demon slayer. She did not see my sword, so I showed her my Odoki sheathed on my back, then my uniform under the haori. I see, she said. My name is Shinobu Kocho. I'm a Suguko of the Flower Hashira and a medical expert. I was sent here in case you get injured. The valley is isolated, so the master wanted me to provide immediate medical help if needed. Wow, talk about prodigal privilege. I assumed the higher-ups did not want to risk losing a talent like me, so they sent her to ensure my survival if I got injured. With many lower-rank demon slayers having died, the demon was likely strong. And this mission was particularly dangerous because even a non-fatal injury could lead to death due to the lack of nearby help. I understand, I said. If that's all, I'll get to hunting the demon, I said, and disappeared. I see him. The demon. I ran toward the movement and the scent of a demon. I drew my sword, my heart roaring in my chest, ready for the fight. Chapter 25. Debate of Death. Seiji's POV. I'm terrified of pretty girls. So, I ran to the less intimidating option, the man-eating demon lurking in the Ia Valley. I sprinted through the dense forest while Raven soared above me. The demon I was hunting made no effort to conceal himself. His bloodlust was so palpable that it seemed he wanted to be found. I could see him clearly. My eyes pierced through the thick foliage, locking onto his demonic form. He looked eerily human-like for a demon. Within minutes, I reached him. He wore a yellow houri with a white scarf around his neck. His clothes were neat and tidy, unlike most demons, giving the impression he was human. But I knew better. Your time is up, demon. Your arrogance has led to your end, I declared, my voice echoing in the small clearing. It led me here, I thought, noticing the scars of past battles in the surroundings. This was likely where he'd fought the demon slayers who'd tried to kill him before me. The demon laughed. Though his back was turned, I could tell he was genuinely amused. It's so convenient this way. I don't know why I haven't thought of it sooner. My prey delivers themselves to me, and I don't even need to hunt them down, he said. His words were hard to make out, but I could see his throat move. You have it all wrong, demon slayer. It's you who've rushed to your own end, he added, finally turning to face me. He had the face of a young man, marked with 3x scars on his forehead and cheeks. But what caught my attention instantly was the kanji in his eyes. See, the number 4 in kanji, written in his left eye. Quote. Lower moon 4, I muttered in surprise, looking down to hide my face. Oh, are you scared, demon slayer? You people have been a nuisance to my master, so he ordered us to kill as many of you as possible. I've been staying in this valley, luring you in so I can slaughter you all, he said, unprompted. I'm sorry, the demon said with a crooked smile. Veins bulged around his eyes, and his human teeth sharpened. His face abandoned all pretense of humanity, finally turning demonic. Actually, I'm not sorry, he corrected, then lunged at me with explosive speed. I looked up, meeting his eyes, and drew my sword, swinging at him. His claws clashed with my blade, sparks flying as he halted midair. His strength pressed against mine, but with refined technique, I held my ground. My usually stoic face twisted in anger. Because at that moment, I was furious, livid, even. Why? You just couldn't show your ugly face sooner, I said, pivoting on my heels to deliver a backkick to his side. Steroid breathing enhanced my strength, and my kick shattered his ribs and tore his liver. A shockwave erupted, sending the demon flying. I had every right to be angry. I'd worked tirelessly to become a Hashira as quickly as possible, a feat requiring either killing one of the 12 Kazuki or slaying 50 demons. Since I didn't know the location of the 12 Kazuki and wasn't strong enough to face the upper moons, I'd chosen to become a Hashira by killing 50 demons. I was so close. I'd slain 49 demons, and he was supposed to be the last. But he turned out to be one of the lower moons. If I'd met him earlier, I'd have become a Hashira instantly, without all the grinding. He just had to show up when his death would least benefit me. It was like that time in my past life when I'd studied all night for a test, only to find out the teacher was absent the next day. It's silly, I know, but damn, it was frustrating. You're pretty strong, that's a surprise. I guess they'd send someone decent after the third time, the demon said, a demonic smile splitting his face. Blood demon art, velocity burst. That's new. I've never seen a demon use blood demon art like that. My eyes widened in absolute shock. The enemy, at least 5 meters away, suddenly appeared in front of me, arms pulled back to deliver a punch. His eyes were demonic red, and his smile was a nightmare. The wind from his sudden appearance blew my hair and dried my eyes, making me want to blink. I could predict movements perfectly. I knew the language of the body better than anyone, and my enemies spoke to me before making a move. But what I couldn't see were spells, blood demon art, and the demon had just used some form of spell to appear in front of me. Time slowed to a crawl as my brain and eyes worked overtime to process the shock. I brought my sword up just in time to block his punch. I'd block the hit, and the demon's arm would be split in half by my blade's edge. But then, something else happened. A shockwave. A powerful shockwave erupted from his fist, and the force sent me flying like a ragdoll. I blinked, and time resumed. Everything happened in an instant. Boom. I planted my feet and slid to a stop. I couldn't feel my arms properly. My eyes immediately locked onto the enemy, this time with deadly seriousness. All silly thoughts were cast aside, all emotions discarded. It was no time to joke around. The enemy was strong, easily the second strongest being I'd ever encountered. I could tell that much from a single exchange. So this is the power of a lower moon, I thought grimly, taking a stance with my sword. Good, I like that face better, the demon said, chuckling, before lunging at me again. This time, I was ready, and I could see everything I'd missed before. He was fast, easily 3 times faster than Jigoro, whom I'd struggled to keep up with. How could the demon gain such speed with minimal effort? My eyes revealed the truth. Shockwave. The demon created shockwaves from his feet and hands. Maybe other body parts, but so far, he'd only used his feet and hands. A powerful shockwave, strong enough to shatter the earth, propelled him forward. The speed was so sudden that his own body suffered internal injuries. Blocking was out of the question since he could create shockwaves with his hands, so I dodged as his body hurtled toward me like a meat cannon. But as the demon flew past, I could tell from his body language he had no intention of missing. He was readying for another attack instantly. The twitch of his arm, the rotation of his hips, the side glance he gave me, all of it told me his next move. I pivoted on my heel and leapt to the side, dodging the attack before it even happened. Just as predicted, the demon exploded a shockwave from his feet, changing his trajectory. The sudden shift crushed his body, but he was a demon, he did not care. By the time the sequence was executed, I was no longer where I was supposed to be. The demon was forced to stop his attack abruptly, his face showing surprise. I can still read him. That was strange, the demon said, then shrugged, thinking my move was luck or a fluke. He casually healed his muscle tears and internal injuries, cracking his neck. I decided to get serious, taking a deep breath. Blue lightning sizzled as I inhaled, and flames burst from my mouth as I exhaled. 2 of the 5 major breathing styles mingled within me. Fine, let's talk. Answer, the debate of death begins.